damage is done. The damage is done. The damage is done. The damage is done.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabby's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And what is going on, fam? We have so much to get into, ladies and gentlemen. Scott Ritter will be joining us in just a minute. I have a short story I want to cover right before that I think is very, very, very important. But there are crazy things going on out there, folks. Let's go ahead and show you what we are going to discuss tonight, fam. Let's show it. And if we have time, we'll give shout outs to people in the chat. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing, of course, Scott Ritter will be here in just a few minutes. He has quite a bit to say. We got a lot to discuss about the U.S. possibly going to war with Iran and Benjamin Netanyahu's hold over the U.S. government. We're also going to discuss, if you haven't seen it by now, you're getting ready for some laughs. Tucker Carlson humiliates Ted Cruz. Yes, he did. Ted Cruz looks so ridiculous in this interview. So I don't know if it was intentional for Tucker Carlson to humiliate him, but it does happen throughout the interview. So we'll get into that, and I will break down what the Bible really tells you about this so-called, Israel. We'll get into that. We're also going to discuss George Galloway goes off. So I finally had a chance to see that discussion there with George Galloway and Piers Morgan. I'm going to dive into this world population that George Galloway mentions during that discussion. And we're also going to show you some of the lies, Piers Morgan getting caught in lies. We're also discussing, well, I can't believe I'm talking about Tyler Perry again so soon, But yeah, this is a big one that is shocking the entertainment industry. And I'm curious to hear how a lot of people who are Tyler Perry supporters are going to feel about this. There is a $260 million lawsuit filed against Tyler Perry for sexual harassment and assault. This is a big one. We may see a split here. We may see a split, folks. And we have another story that I do want to discuss that I think is very, very good. Pentagon official removed for criticizing Israel. That is another story that I do not want to go by the wayside. The theme tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is the damage is done. The damage is already done. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. You are holding down the fort, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, you are. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also a group called Sabsters. I don't know if you heard about those Sabbies, but they're not too shabby. We have them too. Yes, we do. And we also have a group called Members. All of their names are listed here. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate all that you do. And I want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for John Ball. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, fam. Yes, 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 ladies and gentlemen. We're going to give a couple of shout outs to people in the chat, and then we're going to go ahead and get into this crazy story that I think everybody should be discussing. Shout out to Algorithm says, good evening, Sabrina. What's up? Greetings. Let me just try to head here. We'll get to the super chats later. Shout out Han says, I'm early, super early. Hope all is well and stay blessed always. Shout out to CBC Voter says, happy Thursday, Sabby Sabs. What's up, CBC? Shout out to Eric, who's holding down the fort in the background, says hello to CBC. Greetings, Blockbuster says hi. Shout out to Kate says, hey, Eric. Greetings, Lorez. Hey, Sabby, Eric, Corey, and RBN fam. Great show earlier with JB. Glenn Greenwald was great on Pierce. Not Glenn Greenwald, excuse me. George Galloway, wrong GG, was great on Pierce. It needs to be stressed more that Israel has nukes and the IAEA hasn't inspected them. Double standard, smash the like. This is so true. Greetings, Lauren says, F Israel and free Palestine. Shout out to Jean-Baptiste says, peace family. Somebody FAFO, huh? Shout out to Priscilla. Sabby, please speak on what Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene stated about Israel. Wonder if he was smeared and not allowed to be attorney general because of what he started. We covered that on Tuesday. I showed their statements on Tuesday evening. It's the story of Donald Trump turns on Tucker. Yeah, we did play those segments there. Greetings, Victor says they are going to do it anyways. Get to know your neighbors. Yes, yes, yes. And Shaz says, hi, Sabby, everyone. USA is the one using Israel as a proxy to fight Iran. This and all wars in the Middle East of the last few decades. I agree with you there. There is a poll, ladies and gentlemen. Please answer that poll. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. I looked at it. The results are pretty interesting so far. But yeah, we'll get to that later on. Again, ladies and gentlemen, the theme is the damage is done. And I want to get to this first story here about the Pentagon. This story kind of flew under the radar, so I'm not sure if you are aware. I don't see a lot of coverage on it so far, but we got to discuss it here. There was a Pentagon official that was just removed from his position because he criticized Israel and he opposed the idea of us sending U.S. troops to fight a war with Iran. I kid you not. Let's bring in this story here. This was breaking news at the time. The U.S. officially removes Colonel Nathan McCormick from his position at the Joint Chief of Staff for posts calling Israel a death cult and saying America is acting as Israel's proxy. First of all, let's give this guy a round of applause. Let's give this guy a round of applause for in so many ways being a hero, to state the truth, to state like what he really feels. Because at the end of the day, not many people are going to be willing to do it. Let's get into the details of the story. Pentagon official axed after calling Israel death cult, highlighting growing U.S. dissent. Let's get into it. McCormick, he served as the Levant and Egypt branch chief with the Joint Chief of Staff J5 Planning Directorate, a position he assumed in June 2024, tasked with preparing senior U.S. military leadership for engagements with partner nations, including the Israeli regime. Operating a semi-anonymous social media account under the name Nate, McCormick posted extensively about his views, particularly following the events of October 7th, 2023. A Department of Defense Joint Staff official confirmed McCormick's removal, stating his posts do not reflect the position of the Joint Staff or the Department of Defense. So let me just explain something really quick, because we have to ask a question. If he was posting under an anonymous account, how did they find out that was his account? Were they spying on him? Are they watching him? Did they use intel to discover who that account belonged to? He wasn't using his own account. It wasn't his name. It was an anonymous account. So how did they know that that was him? I don't even think they trust their own employees. The matter has been referred to the U.S. Army for further action, and McCormick's social media account has since been deleted. So they deleted his account after that. The colonel's posts documented prior to deletion were sharply critical of Israeli policy and U.S. support. In April 2024, he questioned the fundamental nature of the U.S.-Israel relationship, posting, "I've lately been considering whether we might be Israel's proxy and not realized it yet. Our worst ally. We get literally nothing out of this partnership other than the enmity of millions of people in the Middle East, West Asia, Africa, and Asia." By May, he said Netanyahu and his judo supremacist cronies have prolonged conflict for their own political and territorial goals. His criticism extended to the regime's military actions. McCormick asserted that Israel's responses always, not hyperbole, disproportionately target Palestinian civilians. He also wrote that Israel's goal was to cleanse Eretz Israel of ethnic Palestinians. Again, this is coming from a Pentagon official who obviously saw the writing on the wall. Again, very brave of him to do that. He no longer has this position, but more people have to talk about this. Furthermore, McCormick disclosed operational details, alleging the U.S. warnings to Israel about the risk of invading Lebanon were ignored. Oh, did you guys know about this? And stated that the U.S. Department of Defense, along with other agencies, considered the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry's casualty figures generally reliable. Now, this goes against everything that we have heard in corporate media. This goes against the data and the information that came from the State Department and that has come from both press secretaries under Biden's administration and Donald Trump's administration. What this goes to show you is that according to McCormick, the Pentagon knew that the numbers that were reported from the health ministry were correct. They also knew that it would be wrong for Israel to go after Lebanon. So they were far aware of all of these things, ladies and gentlemen. So again, like I said, this guy is a hero. McCormick's dismissal, however, is not an isolated incident, but a symptom of a widening rift with American society and political circles, a growing sentiment of the American public weary of vast financial and military resources being extended into support of Israeli actions. Again, it calls out that YouGov poll, which we've shown before on the show, that says only 16% of Americans support U.S. military involvement in a conflict with Iran. So this colonel is a hero. He's the only one that was willing to speak out. And again, you need to ask the question, if his account was anonymous, How did they know it was his account? Which tells me that they had been tracking him. They had been following what he has been doing. Now, I want to show you something else. Speaking of the Pentagon, this is from Aaron Mate. We have to share this video here. One overlooked Trump move that takes on new silence is his ouster this year of General Charles Brown. He was the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. Sound familiar? Okay. In a rare January 2024 interview, Brown signaled that he sought to prevent war with Iran. You guys remember hearing about this guy? I don't think a lot of people saw this. Listen to what he says.
Well, part of our work here is to make sure as things have happened in the Middle East, is not to have the conflict broaden. And so as I provide advice and we think about the approach we take, we want to ensure that we take away capability while we protect our forces, at the same time, not have this broaden into a much wider conflict.
When you walk this fine line of not wanting it to escalate, what would you say to those people who are your critics who would say, look, they're not being tough enough on these militants. They're not being tough enough on Iran.
I would also ask, do they want a broader conflict? Do you want us in a full-scale war? And that's the goal, is to deter them. And we don't want to go down a path of greater escalation that drives to a much broader conflict within the region. Well, part of
Okay. And he's gone. So what we are seeing is that Pentagon officials, military officials, we can even say, politicians as well, that have decided to speak out against escalating, war, conflict in the Middle East. They are removed from their position. So what you see that just happened with Pentagon official McCormick, we also see that this happened with Chairman Brown as well. And I show you this to say this. I think a lot of times it's hard to be positive about what's going on, right? It's very hard. We can have some type of hope, but it's been very difficult. I want you to see that there are people who are speaking up. There are people who are in that, apparatus, that military apparatus, that did decide to speak out, and they are gone. And one of the others that has been very vocal, who's been on the show, has been Colonel Larry Wilkerson. And I want you to hear what he said about the Pentagon involving the Iraq War. Listen to this.
And it's unquestionable that the Epstein business was heavily influenced, let me put it that way, by Mossad.
And so that's somehow emblematic on these huge geopolitical issues.
Yes, I watched Mossad take over the Pentagon. In 2002, the Pentagon was infiltrated by Mossad. They did not need any identification to get through the river entrance of the building. They went upstairs to Douglas Feith, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the third most powerful man in the Defense Department. Occasionally, they went to the second most powerful man, Paul Wolfowitz, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and they had run of the Pentagon. Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, said to my boss one time, hell, I don't run my building. Mossad does. And it's unquestionable that the Epstein.
So everybody hearing what he's saying? Who is really in control here, folks? One more time, we're gonna just jump ahead here.
I watched Mossad take over the Pentagon. In 2002, the Pentagon was infiltrated by Mossad.
In 2002. And then we lead to the war in Iraq, right? So put two and two together, ladies and gentlemen. There's a video that's floating around somewhere on X. Every now and then it pops up, and it is an interview of Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledging that he controls Congress. That he's like, we control all the politicians that are in Congress. We have been infiltrated. And I don't know, people have different opinions about how this government should operate. But I think a lot of us and most of us would say that we do need to put the American people first. And our government has not been doing that. That hasn't happened under Biden's administration. That's not happening right now under Trump's administration. Honestly, that hasn't happened for a long time. I'm trying to think about it, like just the people that I was of age to vote for. It hasn't happened in a long, long time. And I think you can see why. Why is Israeli intelligence infiltrated in the Pentagon? Why are they telling the Pentagon what to do? So no, it's not America first. It's not. It's not America first. If you have another country, could you imagine? Could you imagine the outrage if it were Vladimir Putin, if it was Russian intelligence that just walked up into the Pentagon and told them what they should and should not do? Could you imagine if it was China, how people would feel? But because it's Israel, everyone is supposed to turn a blind eye. No, 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 no. Number one, in my opinion, I don't feel like that's security. I don't feel like that's security. Why is this allowed to happen? Everyone should be outraged about that. This is insane. Other countries wouldn't be able to do this, but Israel can. And then we lead to the war in Iraq, right? Where'd that come from? I remember at the time asking myself, why are we going to war with Iraq if the men that were flying the planes for September 11 were from Saudi Arabia? That didn't make any sense to me. The response was Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Okay. What does that have to do with September 11? And there were other people who asked that question as well. Where'd that come from? That came from Benjamin Netanyahu. It was Benjamin Netanyahu who came to Congress and told them that he believed that that he believed that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Next thing you know, we're going to war in Iraq, losing American soldiers because Benjamin Netanyahu told us to. Who else does this? And why do we have an allyship with Saudi Arabia? Because if it's really about a threat and who's a threat to America, we weren't attacked by Iran. Do you guys remember this happening? Do people remember Iran attacking us? Does anybody remember us being attacked by Hamas? No, these things didn't happen. But we are buddy-buddy with Saudi Arabia. That's how you know they have been feeding us a crock of BS, ladies and gentlemen.
They did not need any identification to get through the river entrance of the building. They went upstairs to Douglas Feith, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the third most powerful man in the Defense Department. Occasionally, they went to the second most powerful man, Paul Wolfowitz, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and they had run of the Pentagon. Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, said to my boss one time, "Hell, I don't run my building. Mossad does."
Everybody hear that? They just walked right up the stairs. They had access. Why does Israeli intelligence have access to our Pentagon where they can just walk in and walk? Can you just walk into the building and walk up the stairs? No, when you live here. No. And you live here. You know, what's interesting. I feel like Israel's trying to find a way to rebuild its reputation. I don't think that is going to happen ever. I think Israel's reputation is 100% damaged, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying to convince Americans that we need to go to war with Iran. And one of the ways that they're trying to do that is these ads. Why does Benjamin Netanyahu have ads on YouTube trying to convince Americans to go to war with Iran?
Years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched.
Why is this on YouTube? Why is Netanyahu speaking to American people on YouTube? This is propaganda. This is propaganda. This is what we're getting on our TVs. Don't believe this. All right? The real terrorist is Netanyahu and Israel. Okay?
Yeah. And notice that Benjamin Netanyahu is speaking in English, which means he's speaking directly to Americans. They are pulling out all the stops. And I'm going to tell you, again, kudos to Colonel McCormick, who was willing to stand up and say, no, I don't agree with this. Israel is driving us crazy, you know, and kudos to him for saying that, because the majority of people are not going to do that. They're not going to say that. But no matter what Israel does, they're crying, they're whimpering now. They're saying, oh no, we're under attack. Nobody has the sympathy, fam. The majority of people don't, because we watched you attack civilians for almost 2 years in Gaza. By the way, even though Israel is attacking Iran and Iran is attacking Israel, Israel is still bombing people in Gaza. Did you guys know that? Gazans are still being shot, murdered, bombed, killed, starved, all at the same time. All at the same time. That reputation can never be rebuilt. The damage is done. And now, one of the biggest threats that Israel has is that Americans aren't feeling this, fam. They're not feeling it. You see, in the war in Iraq, we didn't have social media. There was no Facebook. Hell, YouTube wasn't even around yet. There was none of that. So we didn't have like independent media. We didn't have social media. We didn't have any of that. So for most of us, we were only able to see what was presented to us on corporate media, the corporate media outlets, or the newspapers, if you were still reading newspapers at that point. For most of us, that's all we were able to see. What they underestimated this time around, after October 7th, they underestimated the power of people to connect through the interwebs. They underestimated the power of social media. They underestimated the power of independent media, whether on YouTube, Rumble, Rockfin, Kick, wherever. They underestimated it. That soldier is a hero for standing up against this and for just keeping it real at this point. Make sure you share this story. When I clip it, make sure you share the story with people, because I don't think a lot of people know about this. And you see, they got rid of him, but he wasn't the only one, and he won't be the last. Let's get to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like. Thank you very much, fams. Thank you. Let's go to some of the comments. Thank you, Andre. Hey, Sabby, do you think you can get Diego Rosarin on your show? He was a guest on George Galloway and has good perspectives. I can try. I'll have to look for that episode to check him out. Thank you, Nico. Hi, Sabby. Sorry. I am from Greece and I lean towards center right. We might differ on some of our views, but I trust your judgment and your desire for peace. And thank you for this one. This is a fight between rational people like you from the left, like Tucker and Scott from the right, against sociopaths who ruined our countries. And thank you for this one. The British are to blame for most of the terrible policies of the West. Piers Morgan showcased exactly who they are: arrogant, smug warmongers. Who the F gives them the right to regime change countries? Yeah, nobody. Like, it's really not our place to tell other countries what they should and should not do. Thank you for this one. I don't know what will happen in the next days. We Greeks respect Iran and they respect us. I hope they'll survive. They are not extremists like Turkey. Turkey's all over the place right now. Thank you for this one. I wish you well and maybe a talk with Tucker. Also, if you want to know more about Russia and Ukraine, a kid from Mariupol has made a channel showcasing his experiences. It's called Videos from Mariupol. I will check that out. Thank you for this one as well. And I love the fact that we are being lectured by the British about democracy, aka a country that systematically used concentration camps after the Boer War in Africa. The Spanish were first in Cuba. Interesting. Thank you with Dre Day. Vote peace. Iran is the IDF's war, not ours. Make sure you guys answer that poll if you haven't had a chance to do so. Moot says, Sabby, I think the government is trying to say Iran's government is in shambles. Please have Scott address. And no, I don't believe it. Said person implied he's in military. Thank you. Thank you, Sophia. Lots of leaders wear cloaks in sci-fi too. Just substituting cloaking, cloaked for fuck, etc. for fun these days does seem to help. Give it a shot, those dirty cloakers. Interesting. Thank you, Courtney. That's probably the reason behind Elon and Doge not being allowed into the Pentagon to make cuts. Israel. That's interesting. Thank you. I wish I could read your name, but I can't. I'm so sorry. But thank you for this. Dear Sabrina, I am worried Zionists will do a false flag attack against the USA and deceive America to go to war with Iran and take out Trump. Yeah, I'll get to that when I get to one of the other stories that I'm going to discuss, but I hear you. Thank you, James. Did the Dodgy dossier make it over there? Lured us, UK, into Iraq. Bellins, all of them. Thanks, Wandy. Israel, Saudi, and the USA killed 3,000 on, well, we got to be careful what we say on here, but you know how YouTube can be. Thank you, Flower Bro. Republicrats put first and Israel first and Americans last. Yes, they did. It's just everyone's just so controlled. We can go ahead and bring up the Rumble rants, and I'll just check on Scott real quick. Okay. Oh, there's Scott right there. Thank you so much, Mark. Ted Cruz, what a douchebag. How can he be senator? ? We don't know what's going on. I think Scott is here. Scott, whenever you're ready, just give me the thumbs up and I'll bring you in. All right, guys. My special guest, you've seen him here before, is Scott Ritter. He's former U.S. Marine Corps. Let's go ahead and bring him in. He was also a weapons inspector. I'm sure Scott has a lot to say. What's going on, Scott?
Just living the dream or living the nightmare. What a world we live in. I mean, that old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. We have been cursed doubly, triply, quadruply. The world is going to hell in a handbasket, and we're along for the ride.
That's right, we are. Oh my gosh. So first things first. There's so much to discuss, but something was announced earlier today that I do want to show you. Let's go ahead and bring this up here. It's here. So I don't know if you saw this. But this is the other day, but we'll get to the announcement today. Exclusive: U.S. moving fighter jets to the Middle East as Israel-Iran war rages. So that was announced on the 17th. And then this is Donald Trump also around that time saying we are beyond a ceasefire. I want you to hear what he said here.
He said I was going back home to make a ceasefire. Not a ceasefire. We're long beyond ceasefire. And I said, why do you say that? Why would you say ceasefire? It's a bad term to use, because a ceasefire means like everything's going swimmingly, we'll take a little time off. It's not. We're not looking for a ceasefire. We're looking for a total, complete victory. Again, you know what the victory is. No nuclear weapon. Mr. President. So I thought it was a very badly worded statement by him, and obviously I let him know that. He said I was...
Okay. That's the statement there from Donald Trump, where he said that they were going full speed ahead. They didn't want him to have a nuclear weapon. But then today it was announced President Trump will allow 2 weeks for diplomacy before deciding on a U.S. strike against Iran, the White House said. Now, that's interesting. That was announced today because according to this, they already started moving fighter jets to the Middle East. So I want to get your perspective on this. What do you think is happening here? Does Donald Trump want troops to go fight against Iran, or is this some type of tactic that he's using? What do you think is happening?
Well, first, I have a question for you, because maybe I've missed something. But Sabrina, has Congress declared war against Iran? Did I miss something here? Are we at war with Iran?
Nope.
Has the president addressed the American people saying that, he has no choice but to go to war? Because the words he used, first of all, if we're not at war with Iran, why does he keep saying we when he speaks about this? We don't want this. We want that. We're far beyond that. Because the implication is we're at war with Iran. And the answer is we are at war with Iran. We are complicit with the Israelis. The Israelis carried out a Pearl Harbor type surprise attack against Iran in total violation of international law. We are talking about a classic war of aggression. And the United States was complicit. We committed an act of perfidy. Now, perfidy is a cute little word. I have to give a hats off to Garland Nixon, who introduced it to my modern day lexicon. I mean, I was aware of it in the past, but Garland brought it back up. But we're the ones, we, America, because I can say we, I'm American, you're American. The president's supposed to work for us. America told the Iranians that we were interested in a negotiated, settlement regarding Iran's nuclear program. And we had engaged in direct dialogue or indirect dialogue, depending on the, how you want to play semantics here, with the Iranians. And we were scheduled to have the 6th round of negotiations with the Iranians this past Sunday. Ali Shamkhani, who is one of the lead Iranian nuclear negotiators, 2 days before the Israeli Pearl Harbor attack on Iran that killed him, by the way, they deliberately targeted this man. Get what I'm saying? They killed the lead negotiator. Said, we're ready to sign a treaty with the United States. Did you hear what I said? We're ready to sign a treaty with the United States that says Iran can't have a nuclear weapon and won't have a nuclear weapon. Isn't that what the president wanted? We're ready to cap the enrichment of Iranian uranium to 3.75%. It takes 90% to make a nuclear weapon. 3.75%, cap it. We're ready to allow U.S. inspectors to join the IAEA, so the United States has a higher degree of, confidence in the verification. They were ready to do a whole bunch of things, basically everything possible to prove that they weren't pursuing a nuclear weapon. And they were told that this negotiation was taking place on Sunday. President Trump said so. The Israelis, Benjamin Netanyahu, said, we're going to wait until after Sunday to make a decision. We're going to give these negotiations a chance. And then they launched a Pearl Harbor attack. The president says, I was fully aware of the plans. I knew everything. That's perfidy. And perfidy isn't just a clever little word that Garland Nixon gave me. It's a crime. It's a war crime. It's against international law. We are a war criminal state that is at war with Iran as we speak. That's what the president's words tell me. Yes, moving aircraft here and there and everywhere is, first of all, it happens all the time. I don't know how many aircraft they're talking about moving. We already have considerable amount of air assets in the region. Understand that we've been bombing the hell out of Syria nonstop for several years. We fly combat air patrols over Iraq. We maintain. What's curious is that the main airfield for the U.S. Air Force in the Middle East, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, is empty right now. All those planes have left because they're worried about the Iranians blowing the hell out of it. I think they went to Saudi Arabia, which begs the question, what's Saudi Arabia's role in all this? So there's just so much hidden into the president's statement. It's very disturbing, the language that he's using. And it just shows that the United States can't be trusted. I mean, right now the president is allegedly sending Steve Witkoff to go talk to Arakchi, the foreign minister of Iran, about negotiation. But why would the Iranians ever negotiate with the United States after this Pearl Harbor event? Why would they ever do that? And it's also, I just want to point out, when the president said, a ceasefire implies things are going swimmingly. They're not. I think what the president's saying is Israel's getting the snot kicked out of it right now and needs the United States to step in.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because it was reported today that Iran bombed a hospital in Israel, and a number of outlets. What they're not mentioning is that there was a military base like right next to that hospital. I'm against still bombing hospitals. However, what they are omitting, and a lot of them did not report on this, is that on Monday, Israel bombed a hospital in Iran. See, they always leave, key pieces out. And now we're starting to see, I saw pictures of Tel Aviv that I thought I would never see, images that I thought I would never see that kind of resembled what we see in Gaza, but obviously not to the full extent of that. And I honestly think, and you tell me what you think about this, I honestly think like Israel is somewhat afraid.
They're scared to death. That's why they shut the borders. Right now, Israel has closed its borders. Nobody's allowed to leave Israel. Why? Because if they open the borders, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Israelis would flee. Israel's becoming a place where you can't live. It's uninhabitable. The ability to sustain viable life is rapidly being squeezed out of Israel as the Iranians target power plants. If they hit the Ashdod power generation facility, Tel Aviv goes dark. They blew up refineries. There's going to be, a shortage of fuel. The economy's non-functioning. And let's talk about this hospital that was hit. First of all, the hospital wasn't hit. The building next to the hospital was hit, which happens to be a command and control center for Israeli intelligence. Now ask yourself, why did the Israelis put a command and control center for intelligence next to a hospital? I mean, aren't these the same Israelis that blew up every frickin' hospital in Gaza under the pretext that Hamas had a command and control center under? You remember that, Al Shifra? Command and control wasn't there, didn't exist, but
they're using the people as human shields.
Yeah. So, and now I have to listen to an Israeli minister say, bombing a hospital is a war crime. Well, no kidding, pal. The hypocrisy of the Israelis right now. The Iranians carried out a precision strike against a military intelligence headquarters. And let me make this clear too. The hospital loses all protection. Read the damn international humanitarian law. The hospital loses all protection the moment it allows itself to become a cover for military action. It's no longer a protected site. Unlike the hospitals in Gaza, which weren't covers for military action, where the Israelis, gosh, what did they do? Snipers shot surgeons while they were doing surgery. Assassination teams came into the operating ready rooms and assassinated patients after surgery was done on them. That's what the Israelis do with hospitals. All the Iranians did is blow up an intelligence command post, which means there was no hospital next to it, because you can't have a hospital next to it. Or else, if the Israelis are claiming that, then they are guilty of a violation of international humanitarian law, because they're using a hospital as a shield for military activity. So let's be quite clear here. Iran did not attack a hospital. Iran attacked an Israeli intelligence command post. The Israelis put that next to a hospital, which means there is no hospital there under international humanitarian law. So let's be very clear what's going on here. But the media is not going to spin it properly, because the media, his job is to make Israel look as good as possible. But you can't make Israel look good right now. That's the problem. There's no front right now where Israel's looking good. Israel's getting beat, blown up. I mean, this is embarrassing for Israel, and it's only going to get worse. The Iranians have been planning this campaign for a long time. They didn't want this war. They weren't ready for this war in terms of the immediacy. It was a surprise attack that gave them a bloody nose and a black eye, and they're missing a tooth. I mean, the Israelis hit them hard. There's no doubt about that. But the Iranians have gotten up, dusted themselves off, and now they're implementing a campaign. And this is what should scare all the little pro-Israeli people out there. This is a campaign that seeks to strategically defeat Israel, and they're achieving their objectives. And this is why Trump is in absolute panic state. Seymour Hersh claims that they're going to attack this weekend. The Donald Trump's 2-week thing. Why would anybody believe Trump? I mean, he said he wanted negotiations on Sunday, and then he greenlit an Israeli surprise attack on Friday. So I don't think the Iranians are buying into any of this. They anticipate America to do the worst, but the Iranians are engaged in a campaign that if it goes on for another 2 weeks, Sabby, we're only 1 week into this war, and Israel's already losing. 2 weeks from now, Israel will have lost.
Colonel Douglas McGregor was on Judge Napolitano's show earlier, and he said that 1/3 of Israel has been bombed. I think people need to remember, Israel isn't huge. Iran is huge. It's a huge, massive, country. And I think I want to make the connection to Iraq, right? The war in Iraq, because this rhetoric, which I've heard since the 90s, since I was younger, that Iran was building a nuclear weapon, right? So they're coming back with this rhetoric again. Benjamin Netanyahu is on live television on Fox News telling people that Iran tried to assassinate Donald Trump. Interesting, you would mention it now and not after it happened, right? Just these types of things, just making up all kind of stuff. He said that America first is America dead. He said that Iran would attack New York City. And here's my thing. I feel like we're back right before the Iraq war all over again, where we were told, which you're very familiar with, that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And it's just like, I remember back then asking myself after September 11, well, if this is about September 11, why are we trying to go to war with Iraq when the people flying the planes were from Saudi Arabia? Didn't make sense to me. And yet Saudi is still an ally. So then the response is Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. It was all over the place, but that's what they used to sell this war to the American people. I feel like Benjamin Netanyahu and the nerve of him to use American television to sell this war to the American people by making up these claims of Iran tried to assassinate Donald Trump and telling people that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, when Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that they were not building a nuclear weapon. Do they think that we're stupid?
Yes, they do. And we are. I mean, you're not. I could be. I mean, people have accused me of being this stupid and worse, but you're definitely not stupid. And I would imagine the majority of your audience isn't stupid. They tune in to listen to you. So that implies a modicum of brain activity. But the rest of America, dumber than dirt. I got in a little kerfuffle on, let's see, Tuesday night. My good friend Gerald Salante, who I love to death, hosted a roundtable with Garland Nixon, Joe Lauria, Dennis Kucinich, and myself. And we were talking about the American people and such. And I'm not cutting the American people any slack. Both Dennis Kucinich and Gerald Salante were trying to say, don't blame the American people. They're hardworking people and they just don't have time. I said, bull. They got all the time in the world. They play fantasy football. They, that requires a lot of statistics. They do a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it takes time to do fantasy football right. It takes time to do any fantasy sport. They follow Taylor Swift. Everybody has their life. Americans work hard. I get it. They do. I know. Trust me. I'm putting in 12-hour days. But we also live our life, which means we make priorities. And all I'm saying is that the American people have not prioritized the lives of American service members or human beings around the world, that we will put fantasy football ahead of the life of a Marine. We will put fantasy football ahead of the lives of innocent Gazan children. We have. We the American people, and I put a lot of responsibility on us because we claim to be a constitutional republic with a certain democratic element to it, meaning that we go to the polls and we vote people in to represent us. We're responsible for the composition of our Congress. We're responsible for the occupancy of the White House. We're responsible for a whole bunch of stuff through the power of the vote. And we have voted in elements that are taking us down the path to war, and we seem to be sleepwalking about it. I mean, my God, you just had the president say straight up that we're at war with Iran. You heard what he said. We. Why aren't the American people go, whoa, time out? The Constitution, you remember that document. It gets a little inconvenient at times because, gosh, it actually matters. The Constitution says that Congress, only Congress, can take us to war. They haven't done that. There's some peripheral movement by Massey and I think McGovern too in Congress to try and do a authorization of use of military force to prohibit the president from going to war against Iran without the consent of Congress. But there's not going to be any support for that because this is Israel, and we do anything for Israel, including break our own laws, turn our blind eye to their spine and their other nefarious activities. But the American people have failed, and they're dumb. So that's what I mean when you said, do they think we're stupid? Yeah, because we are stupid. Stupid is as stupid does, baby. And right where we're not doing anything. about the most consequential thing. Do you understand, the American people? I'm talking to you right now, not you, Sabby. I'm talking through you. That if we attack Iran in the name of Israel, because this is about Israel, this isn't about America. Iran doesn't pose a threat to America at all. At all. Iran is bending over backwards to work with America, to be friends with America. They have a president who wants good relations with America. He has told the IRGC several times not that he's opposed them in the highest councils of Iran, saying, no, I won't support this because that would put us at odds with America, the potential of conflict with America. Turns out the IRGC was right, that America can't be trusted, but they have a president who wants good relations. If we attack Iran, they will, kill a lot of Americans. You ready for that, America? You ready for your sons and daughters to come home in body bags? Because I know it looks cool on movies. You get to watch, Kevin Bacon go and escort a body home and cry when he falls in love with the wife of the fallen soldier. And oh, it's so romantic and wonderful. And it was a good movie. I loved it. But my point is, that's Hollywood. You ready for the reality of it? Because the reality is they're going to come home in body bags if we can recover their bodies. That's a big if. Are you ready for that? Because they're going to come home in big numbers. Are you ready for the headlines that say America got its ass kicked? Because we're going to get our ass kicked. We can't defend our bases from Iranian missiles. Look at Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is defended by the most densely packed in anti-ballistic missile shield the world has ever seen. And it's getting beat on a daily basis by the Iranians. We got nothing at our bases. They will flatten them. But then they will flatten the energy production capacity of the Middle East. Gone. And here's the thing. It's not just that you're going to be spending $25, $30 for a gallon of gas. It's you're going to starve to death. You know what happens when we don't have diesel in this country? And we won't have diesel in this country. The trucks don't drive. You know that grocery store you like to go to? Get all that funny food that we eat? Where do you think the food comes from? It ain't local. It comes from California. It comes from Florida. It comes from other places. And it's brought here by trucks, driven by truckers who have to put diesel in the tanks of the trucks. And when you don't have diesel, the trucks don't drive and nothing moves and your shelves are empty. That's what's going to happen, America. Total paralysis of this country. Now ask yourself what happens when you're hungry, when you got no gas. You can't drive your car. You're at home, power going out, can't pay bills. Do you think Americans are going to sit around and go, shucks? Or do you think they might actually rise up and do something about it? This country is fundamentally divided right now. I mean, I'm not promoting this. I love my country and I want my country to remain intact. But my God, if you don't understand the trajectory on, we have a man in the White House who is literally insane. He's a narcissistic madman who's insane, has lost it. And he's going to take us to a war with a country that has a plan to beat us. And they're going to execute that plan. And we will fall apart from within. All of our strategies, the CIA strategies of regime change, all require us to sanction, isolate, and then work our nefarious ways inside to cause societies to collapse from within. Our society's collapsing from within. I mean, we are literally just one major federal crisis away from states starting to talk about secession. And then we have civil war, and then we don't have the United States of America anymore. That's the direction we're heading, ladies and gentlemen, because we have an orange-faced fat fool sitting in the White House who has lied to us and is lying to us now, and Congress doesn't have the courage because we've sold out to Israel. We've literally sold out. This country is controlled by here. Now, the good news is if we don't do anything, Israel's going to lose this war. They're going to lose. They're losing. They can't win this war. Have you seen Lord of the Rings? One of my favorite.
I've watched it over and over and over again.
Yeah. So the second movie, the King of the Rohan, and he's been taken over. There's an evil spirit inside him, and he's weak, and there's somebody whispering in his ear. Let's call the King of Rohan America, and let's call the person whispering in his ear AIPAC, and let's call the evil force behind there Israel, and they own him, and he can't see it. Whisper, oh yes, but we must do this. But in the moment Gandalf comes and drives out the demon, clear eyes and all that. As soon as we can free ourselves from Israel, we are going to be clear-eyed and this country will cure itself. But Israel has infected this country. It's a parasite that's taking control of us. And we have a chance right now to see Israel lose. And if Israel loses this war with Iran, as it will, Israel will cease to exist. Not because Iran's going to drive them into the sea and murder them, because Israel's going to fail as a state. Millions of Israelis will flee. If they open the borders right now, Israel's going to empty out.
Yeah.
Millions will flee. And then you have a demographic problem. How do you continue to justify the continuation of an exclusive Jewish state when, let's say, there's only 3 million of them left and there's 12 million non-Jews? Suddenly you're looking at a two-state solution, a one-state solution.
Uh-oh. I think Scott froze there for a second.
I think the FBI just took care of us. I have to stop talking about the demise of Israel. They're going to bump you. But look, I'm just saying that Israel's the problem here. And America's on a highway to hell because of Israel. And the American people are stupid because they're letting it happen.
I will say one thing that gave me hope is that recent poll that said that 60% of Americans don't want America to go to war with Iran. I wish that number was higher, but the fact that this just began and it's already 60% say no, I see that more as, a positive thing. I think that's why Benjamin Netanyahu is posting these ads on YouTube in English to try to convince Americans that we need to go to war with Iran because they realize they're just losing the fight there. I have a question for you here about Tulsi Gabbard. Ray McGovern has an interesting point here. He said, memo to Tulsi Gabbard, resign. Trump has trashed the last vestige of independent intel analysis. Don't lie. You are not on the same page. Leave lying to Trump. He knows Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. Go public. Americans have the right to know this. Tulsi Gabbard has been very quiet, Scott, since she made that video warning about nuclear war. But she did give that, she was at that hearing and she did say that Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. What do you think is happening there? You think there's a chance that Tulsi could come forward and just let people know, listen, this isn't right? Why is she so quiet?
Well, first of all, she's the director of national intelligence. She's not a political figure. Her job is to advise the president of the United States, not to come screaming and reporting to the American people. Look, I like Ray, felt that if Tulsi being shamed by the president the way he did on TV, remember when they said, Mr. President, Tulsi Gabbard briefed Congress that there was no, and he says, I don't care what she says, which implies that he's not getting his intelligence from the United States, he's getting it from Israel. And at that point in time, I said Tulsi should probably resign. But then you hear stories about cabinet meetings where she's there and the pushback in the cabinet meetings. You also hear that Tulsi Gabbard made that video about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's a reason why she made that video. She's not stupid. She's a very smart person. And she made that video because she knows that the president is planning to drop a nuclear bomb on Fordo right now. And she made that video to say, no, nuclear weapons cannot be used. That was an indirect attack. The president is reportedly furious at Tulsi for making that video. She didn't mention him. She didn't mention policy. She just said, I came back from Hiroshima and Nagasaki and we can never use nuclear weapons again. Amazing statement. So she hasn't remained silent. She's spoken out on the critical issue of the day in a very dramatic fashion. But if she resigns, and this is what I would ask Ray, who's going to stop the president? Right now, Tulsi's in the meetings and she's constantly reminding the president and around everybody, she goes, they don't have a nuclear weapon. They're not pursuing a nuclear weapon. This isn't like George Tenet with George W. Bush going, it's a slam dunk, Mr. President, slam dunk, WMD, let's go to war. This is Tulsi in front of the cabinet where the president's trying to make a case for war based upon Iran pursuing a nuclear weapon. The director of national intelligence saying, no, they don't have it. And that prompts other people to speak up and say, then why are we talking about going to war, Mr. President? I mean, and the president has to pull back and say we have to consult and all this kind of stuff. So I like Tulsi where she is right now, because she is, I think, the break, and she's also the moral conscience that needs to be in place to stop this madman from, committing horrific acts in our name. And the other thing with Tulsi speaking up like that, it allows the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to question the legality of action, because the chairman, while you have to obey a legitimate order, if you're going to go to war, I mean, the chairman might say, what is our authority for the use of military force, Mr. President? Has Iran attacked us? No. Why are we attacking Iran, Mr. President? Is there an imminent danger? Yes, nuclear weapons. Well, Mr. President, the director of national intelligence says there is no nuclear weapons program. And if you're going to contradict her, what's your intelligence? Does the president want to commit to the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff that he's acting on Israeli intelligence that hasn't been vetted by the American intelligence community? See, so Tulsi being there creates a lot of problems for him. I imagine that when this crisis is over and we don't go to war against Iran, and I hope that's the case, he will fire her. And then she'll have a chance to come out and speak. But right now, Tulsi's in the exact position she needs to be, because she may be the only thing that's stopping this president from going to war right now.
Militarily, what is the possibility of this happening? Thank you for this, Katerina. Netanyahu said today they can continue the war without the U.S. Thoughts. What is Israel militarily without the United States if the U.S. is not involved in this war?
Well, Israel has, first of all, has a very large and very capable military. Their air force is especially lethal. Modern aircraft, modern weapons, highly trained pilots. But Israel, for the last couple of years, has been running exercises. Before October 7th, 2023, they ran a series of exercises in the 2 years prior. I think Chariot of Fire was the last exercise. And basically, it was a stress test of the Israeli force that said, can we beat all of our enemies at once if we had to fight them all at once? And the answer was no. And the problem was Iran. Israel does not have the capacity to initiate and sustain a war-winning fight against Iran. Iran's too big, and Israel will run out of resources. They can't win the war against Iran. They need American help, and all of the exercises had America coming to Israel's assistance when it came to Iran. So as long as the United States is staying out of this fight, Israel can't win this fight. They don't have the physical capacity to win in a conventional fight. They want to bring in nuclear weapons. That's a whole different discussion and reality we move into. But conventionally, Israel can't beat the Iranians in a stand-up fight. The Israelis tried to deliver the knockout punch. They went for decapitation, killing a lot of senior IRGC leaders, thinking that if they got rid of this hardcore element, that they would free up the moderate Iranian government to act on its, natural inclinations to pursue peace, and that they would get the Iranians to say, just stop bombing us and we'll give up our nuclear program. Then they also thought that maybe that could lead to unrest inside Iran, and you could see the theocracy collapse and you have regime change. And then when you have regime change and a government that wants to be friendly with the West, you can dismantle the missile program. That's what the Israelis were looking for. Didn't happen. They killed a lot of guys. They delivered this knockout punch, shock and awe. Today, the Iranians are closer to the theocracy than ever before. They've rallied around Ali Khamenei. They've rallied around the president. They've rallied around Iran. And Iran, even if they kill Ali Khamenei, and I believe they will, I believe that this doesn't end without him dead. They're going to go for him. They're going to kill him. But he's already said, I'm a dead man. He's acknowledged his death. He said, I will die. But Iran will continue. Iran is a theocracy. There will be somebody to replace him. When the Pope dies, there's always white smoke that eventually comes out of the chimney. If they kill Ali Khamenei, the Assembly of Experts will pick a new Vilayati Faqih, supreme jurisprudence. And that's the way it is. They're not getting rid of this. They're actually just empowering the theocracy even more.
So I want to. Go ahead.
The Israelis. Go ahead. No, I'm just saying that they're in. You do know. I just want to just say this because I saw your face when I said Ali Khamenei and assassinated. You're like, what? You do know that at the end of the Gulf War, Desert Storm, when the war ended, Iraq had fired 49 Scud missiles into Israel. 49. Here, the Iranians have fired like 490, but 49. And the United Nations put together the special commission, inspectors like me who were supposed to go in and get rid of the weapons of mass destruction. The Israelis weren't satisfied with that, and they had a meeting, and the director of military intelligence, Uri Sagay, said the only way we're ever going to be safe is kill Saddam Hussein. And they began planning an assassination of Saddam Hussein, and it was ready to be executed in November of 1993. They were a week away from the event, which was a funeral of Adnan Kharala, the uncle. Saddam would have attended. The Israelis would have had their assassination team in place, and they would have killed Saddam. But they had a mishap at the final training exercise. 5 Israeli soldiers were killed, and that was the end of the exercise. The Israelis, though, didn't give up. They were still saying the only way this ends is with the death of Saddam. Now, I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I flew to Israel in October of 1994, and I met with Uri Sagay. I insisted on meeting with him. The Israelis were like, "You don't get to meet with him." And I said, "Well," and I leave. So I got the meeting. And long story short, I got the Israelis to agree that assassinating Saddam wasn't the answer, that working with the inspectors was the answer, that the way to secure Israel is to guarantee Iraq's weapons of mass destruction programs were thoroughly eliminated, and if Israel had intelligence, to give it to us so that we could complete the task. By the time I finished this 4-year collaboration with Israel, Saddam Hussein went from being a man who had to be killed to the final assessment I got from the Israelis in June of 1998 was that Saddam Hussein was a rational actor the Israelis could live with as long as there were no weapons of mass destruction. So as long as the weapons inspectors continued to do their job, the Israelis saw no threat from Saddam Hussein. Then the CIA ended my mission, and the Israelis replaced their intelligence chief, and then we got 9/11 because the Israelis began manufacturing intelligence again. But for a brief moment there, we were able to get the Israelis to change their position. But assassination has always been their thing. So right now, I can guarantee you, because I've been there and done that. The reason why I told that story is just so people understand I'm not making stuff up. I can guarantee you that the Israelis right now have made a decision that the only way they will ever feel safe is with the theocracy eliminated, and they have begun planning to assassinate Ali Khamenei, and they will make an effort on his life. It appears they may have already made several efforts on his life, but that's how the Israelis operate, and we as Americans need to distance ourselves. First of all, it's illegal. We're not allowed by law to assassinate heads of foreign states.
Yeah,
but we do it.
I
Qasem
mean,
Soleimani,
yeah, I was about to say Soleimani. The speech from Netanyahu on Fox News to me sounded like a threat when he said that America first is America dead, and he said New York would be next. To me, that sounds like a threat, and my fear is that there will be a false flag event in the United States that's going to be big, and I fear it's going to be blamed on Iran. And I feel like that's how they're going to get support from Americans for the U.S. to go to war and to be at war with Iran. To me, it just sounded like a threat. And I don't know, maybe I'm just, being like conspiratorial, but I'm just thinking of things that have happened in the past. It just seemed like to me, the way he said that, it sounded like he was threatening us, like he was telling us that we better back them or something's going to happen here on American soil.
Well, he did say that, but the implication, I don't think the Israelis are going to carry out a false flag. Watch tomorrow, there's a false flag attack, and everyone can say Scott Ritter was wrong again. Okay, I don't care, but I don't think they will, because I've done forensic investigations. It's very hard to pull something off like this when you have people actually looking into it. I think what he's doing is telling the Americans, because remember, let's put it into perspective. Israel's losing. Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister of a nation that's losing a war right now. And every rational actor, when they look at the data, understands that. I mean, this is data that everybody's talking about. They're going to run out of ballistic missile interceptors in a week, in 3 weeks. They're going to run out of them. Well, the point I make is they haven't run out of them yet, and Israel's still getting the crap pounded out of it. So it doesn't matter about ballistic missile interceptors. The Iranians have already solved that problem. If they run out, that just means Iran has even more free reign to bring about the destruction. But, Iran is at the point right now where they're just every day picking off 3, 4, 5 high-value targets. Boom, gone. Tomorrow, they'll pick off 3 to 4, 5 more. And then they keep going. And Israel's a small country. There's only so many high-value targets that exist in Israel. And at some point in time, Iran will have destroyed them all. And so what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying is, if we go down, if we die, being Israel, you're next. Iran won't stop until they come for you. That's what I think he's trying to say is you have to help us fight, stop them now, or else they're coming after you. It's the old, we have to fight them over there, or else we have to fight them here way of thinking. But I don't think he has too much credibility amongst Americans anymore. I mean, he is, after all, an indicted, genocide committing maniac. And I think Americans have sort of lost the luster. I mean, the establishment, of course, remains in Israel's pocket. AIPAC, Miriam Adelson's $100 million bribe to Donald Trump to get Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State, things of that nature. But I think the American people are waking up that Israel is increasingly problematic. So I don't see a false flag taking place, and I don't see his words resonating with Americans right now. We need to wake up, though, and make sure that Donald Trump, and here's the important thing. I mean, I don't know how you feel about Tucker Carlson, and I don't know how you feel about, Steve Bannon and all these other, MAGA fanatics. But when MAGA starts turning on Trump, he's got a problem. And right now, Donald Trump has a huge political problem. This isn't about national security, because Iran doesn't pose a threat to us at all. Donald Trump owes Miriam Adelson something. He owes Israel something. So he's trying to deliver on that. But Donald Trump doesn't want his legacy tarnished. He wants to go down in history as the greatest president that ever lived, who did all these cool things. If he goes to war with Iran, he's going to lose his base. The people who voted for him, who said, we voted for a president who said he wanted peace, a president who said he wasn't going to get us involved in another Middle Eastern war. He will lose his MAGA base. That doesn't mean that, of course, he gets kicked out of the White House. But what it means is, first of all, midterm elections, he's going to lose Congress. I mean, how could he? The Democratic Party is in such disarray right now, just scattered to the winds. I mean,
broke.
Yeah. Well,
And
he's going to fix them. He's going to fix them real quick. Go to war with Iran and watch how quick the Democratic Party gets fixed, because people are going to say no to that nonsense. And, they'll take over Congress, and then they'll just hamstring this guy, and he'll spend his final days in the White House, tucked in a corner, tears running down his fat orange face. He doesn't want that. He's been told that his base, and this is the problem, his base has turned on him. And that's what Donald Trump, right now, he's not trying to get somebody to tell him, we can do this, we can do that militarily. He's trying to get people to come and say, the base will stick with you, Mr. President. He's trying to win back the base. 2 weeks isn't about, changing the military outcome in the Middle East. 2 weeks is about him going out to Tucker Carlson and going out to Steve Bannon and going out to all these other MAGA heads and saying, no, you have to support me. You have to back me up on this one. This is important. It's not what you think it is. So he has to make the case for war. And I don't think he's going to be able to make that case, but he's going to make an effort, I believe, which is why I don't think he's attacking in the next 2 days. But I will say something, and I'll put this. I think I've had this conversation with you before, and I said that the only way Fordo gets taken out is with a nuclear weapon. It's the only way that deep buried enrichment facility. Well, gosh, it seems the White House has recognized it, because now you have senior White House officials telling the press, if we're going to bomb Fordo, it's going to be with a tactical nuclear weapon. So I'm just telling you, we're going to nuclear war. I've said that all along. Everybody poo-pooed me. Everything I said about how the United States is going to approach Iran come true. All the criticism I had of Iran. You remember, I said Iran can't have 60% enriched uranium because it makes them a threshold nuclear power, and the United States will use that to make the argument of an imminent threat. They just made it. Word for word, things I told you the last time I spoke and I told to other people, the General Kurilla on June 10th went before the United States Congress, word for word. It's almost as if he cut and pasted what I told you.
Yeah. I think Scott froze for just a second. We'll give him a second. We'll see if he comes back. In the meantime, we go to one of these here. We'll go to some of the super chats while we wait for Scott. Thank you, William. Hi, Sabby. I am disgusted with anyone supporting liar, murderer Trump. We can never, ever forgive or forget Trump and BB genocide, both NWO puppets. Thank you. Let me tell Scott he froze. Yeah, he'll come back. We'll go to some more of the chats, and then we'll give Scott a second. Thank you, Susanna. You can have peace, prosperity, and happiness, or you can have Israel. You can't have both. Thank you, Mika. The biggest threat to this country is Israel. In fact, to the world, it couldn't be more obvious. Thank you. Thank you, Anabi, for the super sticker. Thank you. Thank you, New York Varsity. Israel was the last one to talk about attacking hospitals. I know, like, the hypocrisy is unbelievable. Thank you, Anika. Sabby, have you ever heard of the Israel Samson option? Briefly, I have to look at that a little bit more. Thank you, Daniel. Sabby, your channel is indispensable. Thank you. Thank you. That is very sweet of you. Thanks, Sophia. If everyone keeps cloaking around, how fast will this change? Fantasy football, ? Thank you, Me Shoot. Ritter calling people stupid, but he said on J Door show that Iran shouldn't be developing nukes. Every country should be able to defend against US. We'll wait to see if Scott's able to make it back. Let me go ahead and push these out the way. But in the meantime, speaking of what Scott was just talking about Donald Trump losing his base. That's what I was going to show you next to go along with this. Hopefully Scott can make it back in. But right here, Dave Smith is one of them. I have two clips I want to show you guys of people making that turn. Check this out. This is Dave Smith. He was on Breaking Points.
The missiles that they sent last year toward Israel, as many of us guessed, that wasn't really their best. They were intentionally making an attack that wouldn't really hurt anybody, that wouldn't really lead to a war, which Iran has done over and over again. But now we've pushed them to the point where they probably don't feel that they have the option not to respond. And Donald Trump telling them to come back to the negotiating table now is a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, what a impotent leader to be sitting there talking about coming back to the negotiating table. It's like sitting after Pearl Harbor and telling FDR, now's the time to go negotiate with the Japanese. Right. Negotiations are over now. The time for negotiations was before this. And so, yeah, Donald Trump looks, and man, I supported him this last year. I apologize for doing so. It was a bad calculation. At the time, it seemed like the right one. But he should be impeached and removed for this one. Wow. And not on some like not on some ridiculous Nancy Pelosi. Of course, the Congress will never do it because they're all a bunch of corrupt hacks.
This is the one thing they support. This is like the
Donald Trump should be impeached and removed for this. All of his supporters should turn on him. It's the absolute betrayal of everything that he ran and campaigned on and everything that he stood for. And I will say, despite the fact that, Donald Trump supporters have been labeled like a cult following, and that certainly is true for a percentage of his supporters, he is going to lose his coalition over this. I know I don't just speak for myself when I say there are a lot of us who simply will not go along with this. So it's just a devastating mistake. By the way, on top of that, he's also going to lose the deportation fight because of this. Because right now he needed all the political capital he could have to turn that, you got a majority support for deportations, but the minority is very mobilized and they're out and they're protesting all around the country. He needed all of his political capital for that move. So here's what we got. The neocons win. More war abroad and, bomb the world and invite the world. No matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain.
So that was Dave Smith, someone, he's libertarian, but heavily supported Donald Trump. And there he is calling for Donald Trump's impeachment. I remember Dave Smith was going back and forth with people on social media right before the election, making the case for why he was going to support Donald Trump, because he did believe that that would be the best way to go towards someone that was anti-war. My speech that I've been giving to people at that point in time was that there was only one anti-war candidate that was on the ballot, on the majority of the ballots, and that was Dr. Jill Stein. It wasn't Kamala Harris. It wasn't Donald Trump. And I think people really need to be willing to break away from this two-party system, because I think you see what is happening, right? There were people who voted against Nikki Haley in the primary because they did not want a neocon. They wanted someone who was going to push back against the wars. And that's why they did vote for Donald Trump and not Nikki Haley in the GOP primary. But it looks like you still got Nikki Haley. You know what I mean? So Dave Smith is one of them. And then earlier today, this was posted on X, Candace Owens has been very critical on her own show, but she also went on to Stephen A. Smith's show to say that Donald Trump has betrayed his base. So a lot of people are coming out, and these aren't people that have like small platforms. Candace Owens has millions of subscribers. So that was something that really stood out to me. Listen to this one.
Well, let's be clear. Right now, the people applauding Donald Trump are Meghan McCain, Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz ran against Donald Trump, and John McCain, with his dying breath, was an ever-Trumper, with his dying breath. And I remember Meghan McCain standing at his funeral saying, "This country was always great. It never needed to be made great again," to take a stab at Trump, even as she was giving words for her father, which is remarkable, right? So if Trump is aligning himself with the people that didn't support him, and the people that did support him are saying what he's doing is wrong, that doesn't mean that MAGA betrayed Trump. That means that Trump is betraying MAGA, okay? MAGA is a term, make America great again. And it was because the American people felt like our country was in a steep decline while we were being told that we had to build up every other country with programs. We had to spread democracy in the Middle East. That's been a remarkable failure. And at the same time, our veterans are coming home and they're being treated like crap. We talked about the farmers, we talked about the ranchers. That was the vision that Donald Trump painted that made me get behind him. And I took a lot of bullets for that. Especially as a Black person who's not allowed to vote Republican. And I don't regret voting for him in 2020 and voting for him and telling people to vote for him, because I truly believe he was the better candidate. And I still don't regret voting for him against Kamala Harris, because I still believe he was the better candidate. But this is a betrayal, plain and simple. There's no other way to say that. And I believe what's motivating that is he took $100 million from Miriam Adelson. And these people, you're talking about Mark Levin, they are Israel first, okay? Meghan McCain, she is war machine first. How's that trust fund going to get topped up? What did John McCain do? These people are neocons because they support nonstop war, because that is how they enrich themselves. And if that is what Trump is aligning with, if that's what he wants his legacy to be, I came in fighting neocons and now I've aligned with them, then that's on him. That really is. I can't tell him what to think or what to say or who to support.
Okay, so, and now you guys see Candace Owens has been very vocal against Donald Trump. She said this is a betrayal of the base. So to Scott's point, there have been a number of people. Also, Theo Vaughn came out recently and said he's heavily pushing back against this. There's Scott right there. Let's try to, I'll bring you in whenever you're ready, Scott, because I'll ask him about this. Okay, here we go.
Sorry about that.
Dave Smith. So to your point, some people are calling out Donald Trump. Candace Owens, Dave Smith. I mean, people with big platforms said no, right? So how do you feel about this? Like, do you feel like MAGA there is a split right now because like people said, no, we voted for you. One of the reasons was because we did not want these wars. Do you feel like there's a split between MAGA where some people feel like they still have to have that allegiance to him? And then you have Candace Owens and Tucker and Steve Bannon and now also Dave Smith saying, no, this is a betrayal.
I believe so. I believe this is a real political crisis for the I apologize. I'm not used to doing interviews on the phone. So if there's instability in my holding it, it's because I've tried to figure out the best way to do this. But just so people know, my internet went out, and it's been that way ever since the FBI raided my house. I honestly believe there's a kill switch that they activate every now and then just to harass me. So I apologize for that. I think Donald Trump has a political problem, a real political crisis. This war will forever. I mean, when we speak of existential issues, this war will. We're not going to win this war. This isn't going to be, going in and dropping a couple bombs and washing our hands and walking away. First of all, to destroy this target, the Fordo facility will probably require the use of a American tactical nuclear weapon. Now we've broken the taboo on nuclear. This is why Tulsi Gabbard did what she did. This is why she made that video. She didn't have to make that video. That's not the role, but she did it as an indirect attack on the lunatics in the White House who are calling for, the use of attack, because that's the only way we destroy this facility. Then our economy will collapse. The global economy will collapse. Everything that Trump said he wants to accomplish, make America great again, America will be in economic dire straits. And he's going to lose his base. He won this election, just so people know that this was, even though, neither candidate was a good candidate. This was a close election, He won this election because Tucker Carlson, because of RFK Jr., because of Tulsi Gabbard, because of Elon Musk. Those people brought sufficient votes over to allow Donald Trump, an eminently unqualified person, to win the presidency. He can't ignore these people. They brought in a whole group of people who didn't want to go to war. One of the big hits against the Biden administration is that it appeared that they were moving us in the direction of a war with Russia over Ukraine, and that they were supporting Israel in Gaza. And Trump said, I'm going to bring an end to these wars. Now, people can say that, in hindsight, that he was just, blowing smoke, but at least he was saying the right thing as he was running for president. And a lot of people voted for him. I voted for him for that reason. I don't like Donald Trump. I have a history of despising Donald Trump. But I voted for him because I didn't want to go to war with Russia. And I thought Kamala Harris was taking us that direction. Now, I think there was a whole bunch of people like me who held their nose and went to the poll and said, okay, I'm voting for you. And if he goes to war with Iran, he's betrayed all of them, and his legacy is shot. And I think, this man is such a narcissist. He's such an egomaniac that he can't, this isn't a real man. I mean, everybody puts him out there like Donald Trump's a real man. No, he's not. This is a moral and intellectual and physical coward. He doesn't like confrontation. He likes to bluff and have people back down. But notice what happens every time somebody stands up to him. He wilts like hot lettuce under oil. Look at China on tariffs. I'm going to got 500% tariffs China. I'm going to break the Chinese economy. The Chinese went, no, you're not. And he went, oh, well, the Chinese have contacted me and they're asking me to change my policy. No, they didn't. Your policy was leading us to failure, and you've changed it because you recognize that you're wrong. He can't push Putin around. He tries, bluff. Putin's like, I don't care. I'm blowing up Kiev today. What are you going to do about it? Can't do anything. He can't stand up to the Zionists. So he's going to take us to a war, even though he promised he wasn't going to take us to a war. But now he has a real problem because his base, the thing that gives him political credibility, is not going to stand there and let this happen silently. So, Candace Owens, thank you. Tucker Carlson, thank you. Everybody out, Tulsi Gabbard, double thank you. Everybody out there that's doing the right thing, speaking out against this, makes this a political problem for this president. Everybody in the base, the MAGA base. And thank you. I mean, because I do think that is why the president hasn't pulled the trigger yet, because he understands that there will be political consequences to these actions that he's not going to walk away from.
Well, one more question for you, Scott. Many people have been asking, what are the chances that Russia could get involved to help Iran? There was a statement that was given by Vladimir Putin earlier where he said, to summarize this, basically that Iran is not asking for their help, that they're not They don't need them, is what Vladimir Putin is saying. Should there come a time where Iran may feel like they need them, what are we looking at here on a greater scale?
First of all, Russia is a nation that deals with things in a very legal fashion. They signed a security framework agreement on January 17th of this year. And there was secret annexes in there, military annexes, that everybody was speculating what's in that annex, what isn't in that annex. And apparently, the Russians were ready to have a treaty relationship similar to the one they had with North Korea, where they will come to the aid of them. And the Iranians said no. Russia wanted to go in and bolster their air defense. The Iranians said no. Russia wanted to accelerate certain programs to get what the Iranians said no. The Iranians said, we got this. We don't need you. We don't want you to do. And people can say that's foolish, but I'm saying that the Iranian people are rallying around the theocracy because the theocracy is Iran. If Iran starts selling itself out in treaties, that dilutes the legitimacy of the theocracy. It means that the theocracy needs outside interference in order to survive. And the theocracy has always said, no, all we need is the support of the Iranian people. So the Iranians have said no. But I think people need to understand this too, that Iran is the linchpin in a new Eurasian reality, the Eurasian Economic Union. Central Asia, Eurasia, is going to be the economic engine of the future. And Russia and China are working to take ownership of this and to control it. Russia signed an agreement with Iran about the North-South Economic Corridor, basically linking St. Petersburg with Tehran through a rail network and shipping networks that connect Russia through the Caucasus region into Iran. This bypasses the Suez Canal. It bypasses the corn, all the shipping routes. It saves Russia billions of dollars in shipping costs. Plus, it becomes, you can't interdict it, with the shipping. China already started the new Silk Road. They sent a train in from Western China. It arrived in Tehran a few days before the bombing began. That's the new Silk Road. And Iran is a member of BRICS. I mean, a major member of BRICS. And so if Russia and China sit back and let the United States and Israel pluck Iran out of BRICS, and it's changing everything. It will undo BRICS. It will diminish Russia and China. And they're not going to let that happen. So I think the Russians and the Chinese, Putin and Xi just finished a phone call today. We don't know the details of it, but they talked almost exclusively about the Israel-Iranian conflict. And I think you're going to see the Russians and the Chinese starting to put markers on the ground. For instance, the Russians said, don't even think about regime change. Don't even think about, assassinate al-Khamenei. And they also said, don't bomb the Bushehr reactor. We have hundreds of Russians there. And if you bomb it, it can become a disaster like Chernobyl. They're starting to create red lines for Israel inside. And I think you're going to see China doing the same thing. I don't see that Russia and China are going to go to war over Iran unless we use nuclear weapons. Now this becomes a different thing. Russians have told American officials in the past, when Admiral Crow was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they were briefing a military option to the President of the United States that had the United States leading off with tactical nuclear weapons. And Crow stood up and said, if we do this, Mr. President, we open Pandora's box. And our intelligence suggests that, other nations that wouldn't use nuclear weapons initially, preemptively, because nobody wants to break the taboo since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they will use nuclear weapons. Russia will use nuclear weapons. China will use nuclear weapons. India and Pakistan, we unleash this disaster. We can't be the first ones to do this. The Russians have said that if the United States uses tactical nuclear weapons against Iran, that it's very likely that if NATO and Europe continue to play stupid games in Ukraine, that Russia will use nuclear weapons against them. Because Russia's not going to be the first to use nuclear weapons. But if the United States uses nuclear weapons, what does it say? It means that this policy of nuclear preemption is real. And Russia's not going to sit back and allow itself to be cowed by America, who now says, well, no, we showed you, we mean it, we'll use nuclear weapons. Russia's like, screw you. We'll just use them too. And once that happens, the world ends. The world ends. So this is a very, very dangerous situation right now, extraordinarily dangerous situation that Russia and China need to manage properly. And I think they're trying to, Putin's woken up about this, and I think Xi's woken up about it. And I believe there's a lot of communication taking place right now with the White House from both parties saying, you know, if you think you have problems with us right now, if you move against Iran, you know, it's over. I mean, Russia can't have good relations with a United States that uses nuclear weapons. Can't. It's impossible. And China can't have trade relations. And so they will seek to isolate the United States, and it's just going to get ugly. So anybody who thinks that Russia and China are just going to sit in the background, they're wrong. Russia tried to make a military agreement. Iran didn't want it. And there's nothing Russia can do if Iran doesn't want it. Russia can't force that agreement on the Iranians. But the Russians are there for the Iranians, you know, in other ways. And, you know, there's been a series of flights coming in from China, you know, big 747 cargo jets flying in from China to Iran. Curiously, the Israelis aren't doing anything to stop it, because I think the Chinese might have said, don't. But who knows what they're bringing? Could it be advanced military technology? Could it be, who knows what they're bringing in? But the Chinese are in the process of doing something with the Iranians. So I don't think you're going to see Russia and China sitting this one out.
Oh, one more for you, Scott. I'm not as familiar. From Anika, Sabby, could you please ask Scott about the Israel Samson option? Are you familiar with that, Scott?
Yeah, on my bookshelf behind me, I've got Seymour Hersh's book called The Samson Option. And Seymour Hersh wrote that book, I think in the 70s. And it describes, or maybe the early 80s, it describes, you know, Israel's nuclear weapons program. The Samson Option is a thing of mythology. And what I mean by that is the Israelis have never acknowledged it. First of all, Israel has never acknowledged having a nuclear weapons program. They continue to have this plausible deniability aspect to it. But the Samson option is something that was suggested to Seymour Hersh. And what it is that Israel will, if they're facing existential destruction, I mean, it's over. Enemies across the barbed wire, Israel's going down. They will fire nuclear weapons against everybody and kill everybody. Like Samson brought down the temple, killed himself, but killed all the people in the temple. Israel will take everybody down with them. There's a problem with this scenario, though. And that is that Israel has an agreement with the United States that dates back to Richard Nixon and Golda Meir about their nuclear weapons program and how the program, you know, what needs to transpire to use nuclear weapons, etc. And there's a whole protocol that has to be, you know, followed. And people are like, well, Scott, it's just in writing and that's old and they will never do it. Well, again, guys, I've lived a long and interesting life. And I was around in 1991 when Israel began the protocol of using nuclear weapons. Part of the things you do in the protocol is that you will have demonstrations, that you'll make certain declarations that don't say you have nuclear weapons, but hint that they're there and all this. When Saddam was firing missiles into Israel during the Gulf War, the Israelis wanted to intervene. They were ready to send their military into Western Iraq, and we wouldn't let them because that would tear apart the coalition. But the missile still came in. So what Israel did is pulled their Jericho 2 missile out of its storage area, and they did a test flight of the Jericho 2. The Jericho 2 flew exactly the distance from Israel to Baghdad, but it flew instead to the Mediterranean. And it was a signal to the United States that if you don't stop this and the Iraqis put a chemical weapon on Israel, we're going to nuke Baghdad. It was a demonstration. It was part of the protocol that had been agreed to in the past. And the reason why I bring this up is that Israel is sort of bound by that. You know, the scenario Israel faces right now with Iran is not a Samson option type scenario, meaning that, you know, this would be Israel collapsing from within as opposed to people coming across the wire. So for Israel to use nuclear weapons, they have to follow the protocol, which gives the United States at any time the ability to veto this and stop it. So I'm not worried about the Samson option. I actually think the Samson option is a little bit of Israeli driven propaganda designed to intimidate the world, to create the perception of a mad nation willing to take everybody down. So don't mess with the Israelis. But the reality is, Israel is a nuclear power whose ability to use nuclear weapons is closely linked to the United States. And if Israel ever uses a nuclear weapon without the permission of the United States, Israel's in a world of hurt, because they will be outside the framework of everything we stand for when it comes to international law, and it will put the United States in a huge bind. I know a lot of people are like, well, we don't care about that, but it's the truth. I mean, this is why Israel has always been hesitant to admit having it, because they follow the agreement that had been hashed out in 1969 between Richard Nixon and Golda Meir.
Interesting. All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. And again, sorry for the internet outage.
No worries.
Okay. Have a good night.
Bye. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got 3 more stories that I do want to cover. Let's go ahead and jump into, we'll get to the super chats at the end, if that's okay with you guys. If you haven't had a chance to do so, though, go ahead and smash the like. Again, the theme tonight is the damage is done. And apparently, again, I did not think that I would be talking about this next person anytime soon. But this is a big story, and I really want people to think for a second, especially those who are part of the church community that continue to like him and defend him. There is a $260 million lawsuit that has been filed against billionaire writer, producer, actor, director, also known as Medea, Tyler Perry. You guys have got to see this. This is coming from one of his employees. Lawsuit accuses Tyler Perry of sexual assault. Derek Dixon, an actor who worked with Mr. Perry, is suing him for $260 million for sexual harassment, assault, and battery. A representative for Mr. Perry calls the allegations a scam. So again, Tyler Perry is back in the news again. And when I first heard about the story, the first thing I thought of is, wow, another friend of Oprah's, because Oprah's friends just seem to, oh my God, not be good when it comes to this issue. Like, what is it? It just seems like a lot of these guys that Oprah tends to hook herself up with, whether it's, who was the other one we talked about? The gentleman that was a part of the school that she founded in Africa, that guy, I forget his name. There was that gentleman who was like a priest or something. Then there was, what's his name? Harvey Weinstein or whatever. I know people feel differently about him or whatever, but now you have Tyler Perry. So again, another friend of Oprah's. I just want to point that out. So let's get into a little bit of the details, and then we'll get to the video as well. So it says he's being sued for $260 million for sexual assault by an actor who starred in The Oval, one of Mr. Perry's television series. Derek Dixon, who played the character Dale on the show, claims in a lawsuit that Mr. Perry subjected him to escalating sexual harassment, assault, and battery and professional retaliation when Mr. Dixon did not reciprocate Mr. Perry's unwanted advances. Now, Tyler Perry's lawyers are calling this, a scam, but there was another gentleman that also was I can't remember if he won or not. I think his name was Christian. Sorry, I forget his last name. But there was another gentleman that also said that Tyler Perry, approached him in an inappropriate manner. So this isn't the first one, but there was that gentleman named Christian a while back. He also came forward, and people, I guess, at the time just didn't want to hear it or didn't believe him. So let's get into a little bit more of the details here. This is from Law and Crime. Check this out, guys.
Dixon is suing Tyler Perry, the individual, as well as his production studio. That studio is called TPS Production Services, LLC. That stands for Tyler Perry Studios in Action, LLC. And he is looking for $260 million.
Let's pause here. So that is Derek Dixon. Thank you so much, JB. It's Christian Keys. That was his name. Another one who came forward before, who had criticized and told people that Tyler, listen, this happened. And people were just like, yeah, whatever, we don't believe it. Well, now you have another actor who is coming forward who is saying Tyler Perry not only sexually harassed him, but he's saying sexual assault as well. Apparently, they're going to get into this, you'll see, where there was a night where I guess he spent the night at Tyler Perry's house after having, I guess, too much to drink or whatever. And he said that Tyler Perry climbed in the bed with him. Like, this is just, again, he's accused. We don't know if he's guilty or not, but I'm seeing a pattern. If you already have the situation with Christian Keys where he called you out, now you have another actor who is calling you out. So I'm seeing a pattern here. There was also text messages between Tyler Perry and Derek here that I felt like if you're an employer and that's your employee, I felt like some of those text messages were inappropriate. I didn't see anything in the text that was damning, but it is inappropriate relationship. Let's go on here.
Dixon, who portrayed a lead role in Perry's show called The Oval, is claiming 10 causes of action for the civil suit. Quid pro quo sexual harassment, work environment sexual harassment, workplace gender violence, violation of the Bain Act, a California law that protects against violation of someone's civil rights through force or coercion, sexual battery, sexual assault, negligent retention, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and retaliation. Let's get into this lawsuit. The complaint starts off by saying, quote, "This case arises from a sustained pattern of workplace sexual harassment, assault, and retaliation perpetrated by Tyler Perry, a powerful media mogul, against plaintiff Derek Dixon, a professional actor and screenwriter. Mr. Perry is an American actor, filmmaker, and playwright who has built one of the most successful careers in the film and television industry. Mr. Perry took his success and power and used his considerable influence in the entertainment industry to create a coercive, sexually exploitive dynamic with Mr. Dixon, initially promising him career advancement and creative opportunities, such as producing his pilot and casting him in his show, only to subject him to escalating sexual harassment, assault, and battery, and professional retaliation when Mr. Dixon did not reciprocate."
Let's pause here for a second. So this seems to be a running theme within Hollywood, within the entertainment industry, where it's kind of like you scratch my back, I scratch your back. I get you this role, I get you, out there and get your acting career off the ground. And in return, you got to do something for me. So first of all, let's say, again, I saw the text messages. Let's drive forward with this. Number one, Tyler Perry was his boss. So even if it were to say, and this is just kind of how I feel about these things, I don't feel like a supervisor should try to assume some type of sexual relationship with their employee. It puts the employee in a terrible position, because if the employee says no, then they got to worry about whether or not they're going to lose their job or whatever, right? So I felt like Tyler Perry was in a position of power here with this particular situation, and that wasn't cool. Like, you don't do that with an employee. This also says something else about Tyler Perry and the way that he treats employees in general anyway. Don't forget, Tyler Perry was against unionizing, didn't want his employees to unionize. There were a number of actors that have come forward that said that he didn't pay them what he should have paid them. We talked about this earlier before, where Tyler Perry was criticized along with Oprah Winfrey by people like Taraji P. Henson because of the Color Purple remake, where they said that they were not fairly compensated, that sometimes there wasn't food on the set. So let's just keep all of these things in mind. It's not just about what Derek is accusing him of. It shows a pattern of Tyler Perry and the way that he treats workers. Let's continue.
Mr. Perry's unwanted advances. These events occurred while Mr. Dixon was employed as a series regular on the Tyler Perry show, The Oval, and while Mr. Perry held direct control over his employment, compensation, and creative opportunities. This lawsuit even compares Perry to some other infamous celebrities who have been called out for their behavior in the past. Quote, "Just like Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, Sean P. Diddy Combs, Kevin Spacey, Roger Ailes, and many others in the industry, Mr. Perry's success has led him to believe that money and influence can get him whatever he wants. That belief slowly transformed into the false idea that Mr. Perry can get whomever he wants. According to the lawsuit, Dixon was working as part of an event staff at a party that Perry was hosting in Atlanta when Perry noticed him and offered him the chance to audition for a part in one of his hit TV shows. Before we get back to this bombshell lawsuit involving Tyler Perry, I want to bring you a law and crime legal alert.
So we're going to fast forward through their sponsorship here. So that part right there is pretty interesting. The way that he was discovered was because he was working at an event, and that's kind of how he got discovered. So it wasn't as, I say this because this is important. It wasn't as though he showed up at an audition and that's how Tyler Perry, you know, became to know of him. Tyler Perry sought him out, right? Or his assistant sought him out. So that, you know, and that makes me think of grooming. That questions for just a second, right? So there are people working at this event, and you go and you pick this guy, right? Have you done this before? Has Tyler Perry done this before, where he's picked people at certain events or just picked out certain people based on what they look like, not knowing if they have any talent or any skill to act at all, but just picking them based on what they look like? And it really makes me wonder, was this possibly grooming? That's what it makes me wonder. And again, you have to go back to Christian Keys, another one who came forward before. You didn't know if this guy had any talent at all. Let's continue.
Part on Perry's show called Ruthless. Then he returned to his event staff job, through which he was hired to work at Perry's parties in places like Los Angeles and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. As Dixon spent more time with Perry, he says that Perry would flirt with him through text messages, and his advances became more aggressive. Dixon claims that he was invited to Perry's Georgia home, where he and Perry drank together. When Perry told him he was too drunk to drive and offered him his guest bedroom, Dixon says he accepted. But then he claims that while he was asleep, Perry climbed into bed with him and tried to initiate sex. Dixon says he tried to distance himself from Perry, but he was offered a role on Perry's show, The Oval. The lawsuit then reads, Dixon did his best to tiptoe around Tyler Perry's sexual aggression while keeping on Mr. Perry's good side. Mr. Perry made it clear to Dixon that if Dixon ignored Perry or failed to engage with the sexual innuendos, Dixon's character would die in the next season.
Pause. If that is true, if he threatened him that if you continue to push back on my sexual advances or whatever, then I'm going to kill your character off in the show. That's so crummy and dirty. And that's someone in a position of power, which Tyler Perry was. Tyler Perry is a billionaire. Again, he was his boss, and he was in that position to dangle that over his head. So if that is true, and he told him that, that is very, very sad. And then I want to say this, if it comes out that this is true, again, he's still accused at this point. But if there's more evidence that is brought forward that shows that this is actually true, I have a question for the church community that loves Tyler Perry, more so the women, because I don't think a lot of dudes really be feeling Tyler Perry movies like that. But I got a question, because what are you going to do? Are you going to hold Tyler Perry accountable for this type of behavior? This is someone that has spent a lot of time in multiple movies talking about sexual harassment or sexual assault. There's a number of movies that Tyler Perry has produced where there is a character who has been through some type of sexual trauma. And if it is true that Tyler Perry was a perpetrator of that type of sexual behavior that he preaches so much against, that is a load of hypocrisy. And it makes you really wonder, who the hell is Tyler Perry? Like, in real life, who are you? Who are you? And now I'm starting to look back and I'm starting to question some of the shows. And I told you guys before, like, he tends to have very similar plots and people get tired of it. But now I'm starting to wonder, was he trying to send a different message by having so many different characters have some type of sexual trauma experience? Was he trying to send a different type of message? Was he trying to tell you guys that maybe he was participating in that type of behavior? I don't know, but it just kind of reminds me of the episode of the Boondocks. If you've never seen the Boondocks, you need to watch it. There was an episode of the Boondocks where they made fun of Tyler Perry, but the character had a different name, I guess probably to, protect them legally or whatever. But they were making fun of him as like this theater director guy who was very full of himself, but was choosing men to play roles based on what they looked like and not necessarily their acting ability. It's almost like the Boondocks were ahead of something, right? It makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder.
Indeed, Dixon's character Dale was shot 4 times in the chest at the end of his first season on the Oval, and Perry always held this over Dixon's head, implying that Dale would survive if Dixon kept Perry, quote, happy. According to the complaint, Perry had made it clear to Dixon that he would kill characters in order to get an actor to be loyal or obedient. During the pandemic, Dixon says Perry convinced him to stay in one of the houses that was part of Tyler Perry's studios, quote, in or around April of 2020. And while Dixon was living in the studio homes on set, Perry often coerced Dixon to drink alcohol and then get on the phone with Perry. Perry would frequently have someone drop off alcohol at Dixon's door. Perry would eventually turn these phone calls into sexually explicit rants. Perry would get frustrated with Dixon and tell Dixon that he was not giving Perry, quote, what he needs. Dixon's refusal to succumb to Perry's sexual advances caused Perry to be ever more frustrated.
Again, what does the Christian community say about this? Because Tyler Perry, he's another one, he always says that he's a Christian and he goes to church and all this kind of stuff. And I'm trying to tell you guys, as someone who grew up in the church, some of the people in the church be the biggest freaks that you meet, okay? So what is the Black community going to say about this? Like, what is the Black community, I would say the Black church community, what are they going to say about this? Or what are we going to, because you can't idolize people. You can't. And if this sounds a little bit too detailed to me to be false. I mean, we won't know for sure, but it just sounds a little bit too detailed. And we're seeing a pattern again.
Eventually, Perry warned Dixon that if Dixon told his castmates about the harassment, Dixon would be opening himself up to lots of, quote, questions and foolishness, and demanded that Dixon not discuss any of their conversations with his castmates. Dixon's lawsuit also listed out some of the sexual commentary by Perry that Dixon claimed he experienced while filming The Oval in 2020. This is what he says that Perry told him. Dixon said that Perry told him, quote, that he liked being choked. That was after Dixon's character was choked by a cast member in a scene on The Oval. Perry also allegedly said, why do you twist your hips when you walk? How can I get a day of Dixon? When will you be thick again? I love how I feel right now, but I don't like being horny. I feel sorry for the first person who flirts with me, and I've been trying to put that energy somewhere else, but everything is sexual on this stuff.
Yeah. So here's the thing. The behavior was inappropriate because he was his boss. It's inappropriate behavior altogether. Now, there's 2 sides to a story. We'll have to wait to hear the other side. Like I said, right now, his lawyers are saying that this is just a scam, but they had the text messages too. So regardless if he sexually assaulted him, these text messages coming from a supervisor to an employee is inappropriate. Period. I don't know, you guys. Like, we're going to have to ask a question again. Like, I feel like the damage has already been done because people had their feelings about Tyler Perry anyway. And the majority of his audience are Black women, or more so women in general. But the Medea, shows, the Medea plays, the Medea movies also have a church following. So I don't know, man. I'm just waiting to see. And you guys let me know how you feel about it. I'm waiting to see, is the church community going to hold Tyler Perry accountable if it turns out that this is true? I would hope so. And also, Oprah got some weird friends. Let's go to the comments in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thank you, Brendan. Israel is a twisted reflection of America's shadow. Thank you, Chiku. Don't be surprised if a false flag is done to Americans and Iran will be blamed. Yeah, we were talking about that. No different than all the other false flags done in history. Thank you, Katarina. Could you comment on the story recently about the alleged hack of Israeli data of the nuclear info and the Epstein files? Could Iran have this? I have to look into that. I don't have a lot of information about that yet, so I have to look into it. Thank you, Dre Harden. As a vet, I think you should have military service or immediate family that did in order to vote on war. That did in order to vote. Oh, Talmud Ted has neither. Interesting. Thank you, Eric. White smoke seen billowing over Tel Aviv, signaling a new Epstein has been chosen. You got it. You're funny, Eric. But I get you. Thank you, Brendan. Scott is the one person the most qualified to be in the Situation Room, not forced to make the rounds on indie media. Says all about our broken system. Thank you, Joe. Samson Option Incidents US. Thanks, Samir. The false flag threat is real, and what Scott is missing is the fact that it would fix the current problem Israel has with lack of U.S. support. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Thank you, Flower Bro. Rodney Hinton Jr., Elias Luigi, Heroes of the People. Thanks, William. Would you consider having Dan Bilzerian on? Not familiar with Dan, have to look him up. There's a number of people been recommended recently. Thank you, Jay. WAPO and NBC are reporting Hegseth and Gabbard have been removed from high-level discussions regarding the Iran-Israel conflict. Interesting. Thanks, William. Palantir AI mass surveillance must be exposed. Shout out to David Cody Peppers for becoming a new member. Give David a big whoop whoop. Megahertz says, Sabby, I wonder what America's political and foreign policy would look like if Kamala Harris had won the election. Tell me your thoughts. I think Israel and Iran would still be at war because Kamala was also very pro-Israel and also against Iran. In fact, she had statements on video of her calling out Iran and saying that, you know, that's the number one enemy, etc., before the election, like right before the election. So we would still be here. Unfortunately, both parties belong to Israel. Thank you, William. Scott is wrong. Israel will lie, cheat, steal, and murder. Thanks, Ace. Deepak Chopra, Oprah's friend. Thank you, Vilma. The Russian-Iran alliance is our only hope for a multipolarity that gives voice to all countries, big and small. Thanks, V. Sneed. John of God, Oprah's boy. That was his name, John of God. Thank you, Kenman. Tyler Perry makes crap and sells it for solid gold. Thanks, Better You. That Boondocks Winston Jerome Tyler Perry episode got banned. For a while, the only way to see it was to have the DVD box set. Interesting. Thank you, Courtney. Oh, Sabby, the church is already defending Tyler now. And if the allegations are proven true, they'll probably say that wasn't him. It was Medea. That's a good one, Courtney. And thank you for the super sticker, William Numbers. Let's get the comments on Rumble. Thank you. Thank you, Julius. Sabby, you should bring Scott to your Zoom calls. That will be awesome. Anyway, I watched Iranian press TV. They say they will not stop till the Zionist entity disappears. I don't think they're kidding. I don't think so either. Like, I really think Israel bit off more than it can chew. Thank you, Wild Rose. This is why we can't have nice things. True. And thank you for the tip on Rockfin Roger. Defend the Guard is a political movement advocating for state laws that would prevent the deployment of a state's National Guard troops into active duty combat without a formal declaration of war by the U.S. Congress. The U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, grants Congress the sole power to declare war. Executive branch has overstepped its authority by deploying troops without congressional approval. And thank you for this one. States' role, National Guard, while also a Federal Reserve force, is primarily a state military force under the authority of the governor. The DTG movement seeks to restore the balance of power by requiring congressional approval before state National Guard units can be federalized and deployed overseas. Only Missouri, South Carolina, and Wyoming has enacted legislation but not passed. We can take this up via CBIAs in 17 states. And thank you for this one as well. Deplete the military of Zoomers and run. I'm sorry, I don't know where I am. Okay, and Zoomers, and run CBIAs to offer all things military uses to lure you in. Free college, single-payer healthcare, decommodified housing, free tech and apprenticeship, vocal training programs, then create and transfer them to government jobs. Guarantee infrastructure to put those newly found skills to use. Minimum wage, matching costs of living in UBI. The purpose of what I said is to make people understand that they have everything they need to empower themselves to actually affect the world stage. Now, Perry, sometimes these people are not victims. They come in with intention to screw the boss. Then when the boss obliges, but later on changes their mind, or they don't get what the boss promises, they yell SA. Well, we'll have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see. Okie dokie. Let's move on to Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson interviewed Ted Cruz, and I don't know if it was intentional to do so or not, but he really humiliated Ted Cruz. Everybody's making fun of it except for Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz on social media thinks he did a fantastic job. Everybody else realizes that he bombed this interview. There was discussion about surveillance, about Israel, about the Bible. Let's see where Ted went wrong. We're starting off here with surveillance. Why is it okay for Israel to spy on Americans? Check this out.
National security
Well, what does
interest,
it
and
cost?
it benefits us enormously.
Well, before we can make independent judgments about whether or not that's true, and I'm certainly open to it, I think we need to know what it costs. So what's the annual cost of defending Israel? Do you know?
$3 billion a year.
No, that's the aid. But I mean, the cost of the weapons, for example, the cost of U.S. personnel there, the cost of moving ships to the region, which we're doing right now, the cost of moving tankers to the region, all of that. Do we know what the cost is?
So look, the last week, I don't know. And there's some lag when the administration, under the Constitution, the commander-in-chief has control of the armed forces. And so President Trump has made some decisions that we'll know the cost over time, but I don't know the last week. I don't have visibility on that. The annual cost is $3 billion. It's a 10-year memorandum of understanding, and that's the principal driver of the cost. But let me make a point.
Let me make a point. Sending $3 billion to Israel, we should be using that $3 billion right here at home. When people say we don't have money to give everybody health care, we don't have money to do this, we don't have money to do that, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Number one, you stop giving money to Israel and let them take care of themselves. That's number one. Everyone in Israel has health care. They have free college in Israel. We don't even have those things here for us in the United States. Does everybody see where I'm going with this? Good. Let's continue.
Massive benefits from Israel. Israel shares the Mossad as one of the best intelligence sources on the planet. The enemies of Israel, the people who hate Israel, they all hate us. It's almost a perfect overlap. And so if we tried to recreate, if we're just trying to defend America, we tried to recreate the national security benefits of our alliance with Israel, it would cost, I don't know, $30 billion, $300 billion.
So can you elaborate? And again, I'm going into this as someone who's always liked Israel and still does. But I also think at this point, given where we are, it's fair to ask rational questions about what the benefits are.
Good.
Yeah, what are the benefits?
So does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot.
Really?
We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our.
Pause. Let me just ask you guys a question, okay? Do you spy on your friends? My friends don't spy on me. What kind of relationship is this? Why would they need to spy on us if we're allies, if we're friends? Shouldn't they just trust us? Or maybe they're spying on us so that they can blackmail people. That wouldn't be a first. Why are we spying on them? If they're a friend and they're an ally, if that's someone that you're supposedly trust, why is this happening? What kind of relationship is this? But see, Ted Cruz takes a lot of money from AIPAC, a lot. So his job is to defend and protect Israel, not you.
Our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. You don't think humans are all. Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work.
The deflection here by Ted is very interesting. This conversation had absolutely nothing to do with socialism. The conversation was, do you think that it's okay that Israel spies on the United States? He deflects to socialism. Has nothing to do with the conversation. This is why I say he humiliates Ted Cruz. You see how he pivots? Doesn't really want to answer that question.
As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's
why the free market
conservative
works.
to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us. And I'm not.
Do you like it? That's my question. I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that, and
by the way,
I'm not mad at them. But you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know. Hold on, I want to know your attitude. You said that your guiding principle, in fact, the only principle, the only criterion.
I said guiding, the overwhelming. I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get huge benefits for it. And you want to see the clearest.
So he still doesn't answer the question. No, it is not in America's benefit for Israel to be spying on America. And he goes on to say here that it's in America's best interest to be an ally with Israel because we get benefits, but he's still not telling you what these benefits are supposed to be. Because it seems like to me, the people who get in the most, aside from the oil, right? Like we know the US and Israel, they want the oil in the region. They want the resources, right? But the reality is, who's getting more out of this relationship? Because like I said, they get $3.8 billion from us every year. They get free healthcare. They get free college. What are we getting from this relationship other than Israel's going to clear out the field? This is their plan, to clear out the field for a greater Israel so that they'll have control of those resources and all of the Muslim countries, for the most part, will be gone. What are we getting out of this relationship? We're giving them all this money, right? So I think Tucker was asking decent questions.
I just want to stop on the spying for a second. That it takes place, as you know, and including on the president of the United States and several presidents. And I just want to know if that's okay and why is it okay? Wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry. I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
Sure, I would say don't spy on us. They're going to anyway. And by the way, the Brits are, the Canadians are. Like, I don't think.
Well, I'm not for that at all. Okay. I think it's disgusting. But we don't actually pay their. We're not their most meaningful sponsor. We're not sort of paying for the operations of the British government.
I gotta say, and this is it's weird. We're talking about isolationists, the obsession with Israel. Why is Israel?
Oh, I don't think I'm obsessed with Israel.
Okay, but I think a lot of people are. And like the question, Israel spies on us. Well, so does every other country. Why are you mad?
Why didn't you just answer the question? Why didn't you just answer the question? Why are we paying Israel to spy on us? Why? Could you imagine giving someone $3.8 billion a year and then the response is, okay, let me spy on you? Okay, so let me tell you what Ted is not going to say to Tucker Carlson. Israel is spying on the U.S. because they blackmail people, politicians, billionaires, wealthy elites, because of blackmail. That's why. That's what part of the whole Epstein thing was about. It wasn't just about trafficking people. It was about blackmail. That's what it is. Now, Ted Cruz can't say that. He can't say it. And you see Tucker's trying to pull it out of him. Like, why? Still couldn't tell you the exact benefit.
At Israel,
I guess. Oh no. I'm hardly the one who's. I've never taken money from the Israel lobby. Have you?
Taken money from the Israel
from AIPAC?
So AIPAC raises a lot of money for me, but it's actually a misnomer because the people who raise money are individuals. Right. So it's not the PAC itself, but they're individual members who believe in the American-Israeli friendship and relationship.
Is AIPAC a foreign lobby?
No, it's an American lobby.
But it should be a foreign lobby. See, this is the thing. See, JFK wanted AIPAC. At the time, it was a different name back then, but he wanted it to register as a foreign agent. Do you know that? He wanted it to register as a foreign agent because he saw what Israel may have been heading towards. He also didn't appreciate the fact that Israel was trying to, and this is interesting, right? At that point in time, Israel was trying to develop nuclear weapon. It's interesting how the conversation changed, right? And JFK had a visit that was planned where he was going to go to Israel to inspect that facility. But then he was killed. It's all interesting when you put the pieces together, isn't it? All interesting. Yes, Ted Cruz takes a lot of money from AIPAC. Last time I checked, it's over 1.1 million that he's received. Like over the years, he's in their pocket. He belongs to them. He works for them. He doesn't work for his constituents. That's how donorship works. People don't donate to you to vote against them. And then also, you have to remember that some of these lobby interest groups, they're writing legislation in Congress. So that's another thing people need to ask. You have politicians sitting in Congress and you thinking, oh, it's just the politicians writing legislation. No, honey, nowadays we got lobby groups that are writing legislation in Congress. See, Ted doesn't want to tell you that either. Ted is bought and paid for. I don't understand why people in Texas continue to vote for Ted Cruz. This guy is the liar's liar. Liar, liar. He should have been in this movie with Jim Carrey.
AIPAC stands for the America-Israeli Political Action Committee.
What does it lobby for?
So, to be honest, not a whole lot effectively. Listen, I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Great.
Did you hear what he just said? He came into Congress not to serve his constituents and make things better for them, but to be the sole leader for Israel interest. There you go. He let the cat out the bag. I mean, Tucker didn't really have to pull that out of him. He volunteered that piece of information. I wonder how Ted's constituents feel about this, that he's not in there fighting for you. Most of them are not. They're there to pass legislation for lobby interest groups that have donated money to their campaigns. Most of these people are bought and paid for, and Ted is one of them. Ted. So he's letting you know, he told you, that is why he is there. Just like Chuck Schumer when he made the statement that it is his job to make sure that the left stays pro-Israel. People expose themselves all the time. We just have to open our ears sometimes.
Work every day to do that. AIPAC, a lot of times, AIPAC, I wish were much more effective. Like, there are folks online who are in the fever swamp of.
They're very effective. Okay. They have been able to win. Last time I checked, is 98% of the elections. 98%. He is lying. It was AIPAC that got Cori Bush removed from her seat. He is lying. AIPAC got Jamal Bowman. AIPAC has been able to get politicians elected and also get politicians removed from Congress. They are very effective. They brag about this themselves. Look on their website. They brag about the fact that they've been able to win like 98% of elections. So what does he mean that they're not really effective? This guy is a used car salesman.
I'm terrified of AIPAC, and AIPAC.
I'm not terrified of AIPAC at all. You're the one who seems a little uncomfortable when I'm asking.
No, not uncomfortable at all.
I'm just asking what AIPAC does. My understanding, having known a lot of people who work at AIPAC, is that it lobbies on behalf of the Israeli government.
Wrong.
Oh, okay.
America has thousands of colleges.
Okay, we're gonna go to the next part because, like I said, like it's very embarrassing for Ted Cruz. I think Tucker Carlson did a really good job. This is hilarious. All right, let's get into this part.
When was the last time AIPAC took a position that deviated from Prime Minister Netanyahu?
All the time.
Name one.
Okay. Let me go back and give a little history. If you want to do a deep dive on AIPAC,
I don't. I want to do a shallow dive that gets.
No.
I want to get to the core question. AIPAC is lobbying for a foreign government, and I don't. It's not. It's lobbying for the United States.
It is lobbying for a strong U.S.-Israeli relationship.
Okay, and it's not has nothing to do with the foreign government.
It wants America and Israel to be closely allied.
Okay, but it's lobbying on behalf of the interests of another country.
So that's not true at all. And if
it's not true.
No. And
how much contact do you think AIPAC leaders have for the government of Israel?
No idea. I
Any,
imagine
you think?
some. I think the government of Israel is often frustrated with AIPAC
Do you think
because
there's
AIPAC's not nearly strong enough.
Do you think there's any coordination between the government of Israel and AIPAC?
Do they talk? Sure. If you're lobbying for more U.S.-Mexico trade, would you talk to people in the U.S. and Mexico and the government? Sure. Like if.
So I'm not mad about that. There are a million countries that lobby Washington. I like a lot of those countries, including
Okay,
Israel.
but AIPAC are Americans. They're not Israelis.
Hold on. There are tons of Americans who lobby on behalf of foreign governments. I know them. I'm related to some of them. I know how it works. I'm from here. So my question is not, is it outrageous that foreign governments lobby the United States? They all do, okay, including Israel. My only question is, why don't we admit that is what's happening? You're denying it, but it's true.
Yeah,
and
why
aren't they registered as a foreign lobby?
Because they're not.
They're not a foreign lobby.
No, they're not. And this.
But they are. But they are. Israel is not a part of the United States. It's not a state of the United States. It's not even a territory. Like, you know, the U.S. has territories like Guam and all that stuff. Like, it's not. It's a separate country. It's not the U.S. It is a foreign country. And yes, it should have to register as a foreign agent. But you see, Ted is paid to say the opposite. And what was really interesting about this conversation is that Ted Cruz was not even willing to, in my opinion, to prove his point. Like, his argument was not strong. Interesting.
There's a fever swamp. Look,
it's not a fever swamp. These are very reasonable questions. And you've accused me of being obsessed with Israel, which I'm not.
I actually haven't. I've said
and being feverish about it, which I'm not at all. I find it's a very tender spot when you ask it, and I don't know why.
So, Tucker, all right, let's go back. I was first elected to the Senate in 2012. I came in Obama's second term. And I actually saw AIPAC be badly wounded in a way they never came back from. And the second term is when Obama did the Iran nuclear deal. And the Iran nuclear deal, I think, was catastrophic. And AIPAC went all in lobbying against it.
Yeah.
There you go, guys. There's everything that you needed to hear right there, right? Don't forget, it was Donald Trump that pulled us out of the Iran nuclear deal. And then had Soleimani assassinated after that. We are always the aggressor. It's either the United States or Israel, sometimes both at the same time, that is the aggressor. The aggression usually comes from the West. That's the thing. I mean, this guy just spills so much.
And they failed. And I was the leading opponent of the Iran nuclear.
Oh, I know. They definitely failed. Yes.
They failed. And what happened, the Obama White House told every Democrat, when I got here, there used to be real bipartisan support for Israel. That has largely disappeared.
That's a damn lie. In Congress, that's a damn lie. You can look this up for yourself. The majority of the politicians in Congress support Israel. There are a few that do not, right? Like, there are a few like Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, very, very, very few. Even Bernie Sanders supports Israel. He just does not support Netanyahu's government. And that's a strong distinction that we got to make there, because there is Israel, right? The state of Israel. And there's also Netanyahu's government. But the way that I have always seen this is that you have to call out both. And let me explain why. Israel, in its very existence today, is a colonial project. The Greater Israel Plan is a colonial expansion. When people colonize, they don't colonize a small space and say, I'm just going to stay here. The goal is always to expand. That's why I say this does not stop with Gaza. This does not stop with the West Bank. This spreads. They don't want Iran there. They don't want Pakistan there. They've already started calling out Pakistan now. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't want them there. So they want all of that area to themselves. It is the last stage of colonialism, and people need to call it what it is. Stop saying this is a place for people to be safe. That is not what this is. A colonizer project that was initiated by Britain. When you go back to look at the Balfour Doctrine, it was initiated by them as if Britain just gets to decide where people can just go move to, knowing there were already people there. There were already Palestinian and Jewish people that were living in that area together side by side peacefully. Theodore Herzl, who's the father of Zionism, who was not religious, mind you, is the one who brought forth the Zionist project. So it was Zionism that came to Palestine that started all of this mess. So it's a colonial project that you got to call it out for what it is. Stop calling it all these other things. Stop saying this is a safe space. Stop saying all that. It's a colonial project, God damn it. You can say the same thing here about the United States. This was a colonial project. When Europeans came here and they killed the indigenous people, despite what they try to sell you for Thanksgiving and all that jazz, the whitewash history, you really think they sat down with indigenous people after they were killing them and spreading disease and stealing their oil and their land? Put everything together. It's a colonial project. Now, we accept that here in the United States. We admit it. We say, yeah, this is a part of colonialism. But they don't want you to say that about Israel. What else do you call it? Let's continue on.
And it's the Obama nuclear deal that caused it, because the Obama White House told every Democrat, pick. You either stand with Israel or you're a Democrat and you stand with the Obama White House. And almost every single Democrat member of Congress said, I'm a Democrat first, to hell with Israel. And then I watched as AIPAC, every one of those Democrats got reelected and AIPAC did nothing about it. And
first of all, Barack Obama heavily supported Israel. He may have spoke every now and then about Palestine, but Barack Obama supported Israel. Supported Israel. So let's just keep it real. Because every one of these presidents that call for a two-state solution, they were like, yeah, we should have a two-state solution. Jimmy Carter said it. Bill Clinton said it. Barack Obama said it. But none of them moved the needle in that direction because they were all bought and paid for too. Ted Cruz is lying. Let's get to the next slide. Let's get to the next slide. This one about the Bible. This one is really cracking me up. A lot of people are calling this out on social media.
let's get into Iran momentarily, but you suggested it was a strange thing that I said a minute ago, that when I came into the Senate, I resolved that I was going to be the leading defender of Israel. And what you didn't ask is why. So let me tell you why.
No, you said I was obsessed with Israel, and you had just told me that like your driving motive to get to the Senate was to defend Israel. I'm like, I don't think I'm the one who's obsessed with Israel.
Okay.
I don't even think about Israel.
Tucker, words matter.
Uh-huh.
And you know that. I said I resolved to be the leading defender of Israel, and you said your driving motive, the reason you're in the Senate.
You want to be the leading defender of Israel. I would think if I ran for Senate, I'd be like, there are people dying of drug ODs on the street.
My driving motive is to fight for Texas and America, and to fight for jobs, and to fight for the Constitution.
Nah, bruh, you can't take it back now, Ted. You can't take it back, Ted Cruz. You made it very clear what you came there for. You came to Congress to fight for Israel. Don't try to take it back now and all of a sudden say, I want to look out for my constituents. That was not your goal at all. At all.
And you played a very, very careful word game of a lie to you.
You're the one who said it, not me.
So you still haven't asked why, but I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
And the reason is twofold. Number one, as a Christian, growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed.
Pause right here. Well, you know what, Ted? I went to Sunday school too. I grew up in the church too. I went to church on Sunday. We had Bible study on Wednesday. If you were in the choir, you had choir practice on Thursday, sometimes Friday. So I know all about this. So let me go ahead and correct something here. The Israel that is mentioned in the Bible is not the modern day Israel of today. A lot of pastors get this wrong, and they preach this to their congregation. And you need to ask yourself again, who mentored your pastor? Where did they get their information from? Right? The Israel that is mentioned in the Bible is not the modern Israel of today. In the Bible, Israel is not a physical place. We will continue to spread this to people so that people really understand this and stop preaching this BS. This is why my mom always told me, no matter what we learn in Bible study, no matter what you learn in church, what the pastors say, always seek out information for yourself. So keep that in mind. When they're talking about Israel, number one, they said in the Bible, he said when he's talking to Abraham's family, I will call you Israel because you are a follower of me. So in the Bible, when they're talking about Israel, they're talking about people who follow Jesus. It's not a physical place. Zionists have taken that, and this is how they were able to get the Christian, group along with this greater Israel project, by convincing you that this is the physical place of today, and it is not. A lot of people don't know. They don't know. They just go to church and listen to what the pastor say, nod the head, and go home. But remember, you have your own book. Like, you have a Bible, you have your own brain. So we used to have to study on our own too, not just Bible study and not just when we were in the church. This is not the same place. The religion is used as an excuse for the Zionist colonial project. It's not the same thing. And a lot of Christians get this wrong. And so it is our job to correct that. Let him continue.
And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of it, says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my. You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in.
So see how he doesn't even know? He's just repeating what was said to him. And this is what a lot of people do. They just continue to repeat what is said to them, and they don't look for themselves. They don't do their own research. People really need to look at this, right? So I'm going to show you something in just a second. We'll come back to crazy ass Ted Cruz. Look at this. I want to show you something. People need to, and write this down. Israel of the Bible isn't Israel the nation. And I'm so glad that I found this. I've been trying to spread this to people. I Am Blakely has been really good explaining this as well on X. The Bible was written in Aramaic in the city of Byblos, Lebanon, from which the word and book Bible originate. Aramaic, the predecessor language to Arabic, was spoken by Jesus Christ and his mother and the apostles, who were Palestinians in Roman-occupied Palestine. Okay, Ted? Okay? Let me continue. Today, almost every person on this earth believes in the one God, with the belief in the existence of soul, a reward, heaven, and punishment, purgatory or hell, and the afterlife for the acts and deeds and omissions while living as a human being on this earth. The country of Israel today was created by the United Nations in 1947 from Palestine. Thus, the country of Israel today is not to be confused with and has no connection to the word Israel of the Bible. Pass this on to your friends. So many people get it wrong. They told us these things too, like when I was growing up. They've been lying to you all these years, just like they lied to you about Thanksgiving. Just like they've so many lies through history that they've told you. And you got to ask, what's the agenda that needs to be pushed here? And just keep it real. If you wanted to say, we're going to colonize this area and then that would be truthful. But What they are doing is that they are using religion and they're using it as a crutch, basically to tell people that if you don't support this project, then you're being anti-Semitic and you're against the Jewish religion. It ain't got nothing to do with that. Israel is a secular state. I don't understand why people can't get this right. Israel is a secular state. In Israel, you have people who are Jewish, you have people who are Christian, you have people who are not religious at all. Put two and two together. What you had was a bunch of Europeans, just like you had in the United States, a bunch of Europeans that moved to Palestine, colonized the area, and through the teachings of Zionism, they pushed the Palestinian people out. That's what this is. Let's continue with Wacko Ted.
But so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it. And you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology. I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker,
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
hold on.
No.
We are not commanded to support the current state of Israel. Again, we are not. We are not. That's not the same Israel that is in the Bible.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what, hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's
descendants of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is.
No,
and by the way,
no, it is not. This is the biggest lie. That is not the same thing. And this is something like Zionists, whether it's Christian Zionists too, they love to spread this lie. No, it is not. I have to stop it here. It's too much. It's just too much for me. But everybody got that. Get it. And Ted is trying to brag about this interview that he had with Tucker Carlson. He's trying to brag about it. The damage is already done, son. The damage is already done. Okay? And you can tell that because if you look at the comments, they're quite laughable. Quite laughable. Okay? So everybody stop spreading that lie. Stop telling people that it's the same because it's not. And another thing I want to mention too, and I think people need to bring this home as well. People have to remember that there are different versions of the Bible. The King James Version is not the first version of the Bible. Think about that. We got one more story for you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll try to keep it quick. Jose says APAC owns Cancun Cruz. Skylar, I'll never forgive Ted Cruz for making me respect Tucker Carlson as a journalist. Never. Thank you, Naya. The interview was brutal and hard to watch. Ted Cruz was obliterated, and I cringed like I was watching the Office episode Scott's Tots. Kudos to Tucker. Thank you, David. Speaking of blackmail, the creation of photography made by the creation of Israel possible, or made the creation of Israel possible. Interesting. Thank you. Where's the love? Great broadcast. Thank you. Thank you, Cole. I know some people don't want to hear it, but Jake from TYT made a bold prediction that the MAGA base would turn on Israel before inauguration. He's right. Interesting. Thank you, JJ. What's up, Sabby? I love the shirt. Thank you. Thanks, Nia. Manifest Destiny equals Christians should expand the U.S. Thanks, Wanker Tanker. Wasn't the book of Revelation actually written as a metaphor about the politics of the time? No wonder people come up with such bizarre theories. I would just tell people, do your research. And that there's multiple versions of the Bible out there. Thank you, Kenman. Sabby, your red lip perfectly complements the dress. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Walter. Come out to Scullers tomorrow night. Jazz on me. Hey, you know Scullers? You local, Walter Beasley. I've never been to Scullers. I've been to Wally's. Haven't been to Scullers, though. Thank you, Kevin. I've been putting my seminary education to work and am blogging extensively to dismantle the use of the Bible to support Zionism. High five to Kevin. Do it, dude. Thanks, Vilma. The world rallies around Iran for her fight against inhumanity, against genocide, and for the Palestinians. There you go. Thanks, Chelsea. U.S. solely blocks permanent ceasefire, refuses to acknowledge genocide, because the U.S. would have to reckon with what they did to Native Americans. Israel, Palestinians, U.S., Native Americans. It's a good point, Chelsea. Thank you, Kevin. Abraham is who the promise is to Ted is talking about. It also says those in Christ are Abe's children. Gal 4. Oh, okay. All right, Eric, no worries. Okay, thank you. And thank you for the super sticker, Chana, the warrior for Christ. All right, guys, we have one more story for you. If you haven't done so, smash the like. Thank you. Okie dokie. We have one more story, ladies and gentlemen, and that is Piers Morgan and George Galloway. I finally got a chance to watch this. So here's the thing. George Galloway is pretty based. I think Piers picks a fight with the wrong people. And one of those people just happened to be George Galloway recently. Not only do you catch Piers Morgan in a bold-faced lie, which he tries to correct later on, but Piers Morgan seems to think that it is up to him to decide who should be obliterated and who should not be. George Galloway really puts him in his place. Let's go ahead and get into the first part here that I want to cover. Let's bring this in here.
Well, you did a good job as his Alistair Campbell to him as Tony Blair. I hope he remembers you if he does get into the Prime Minister's seat. I'm frankly astounded that you did not ask him about the bombing of the Iranian state TV station just a couple of hours ago, the mass murder of tea ladies, technicians, journalists, and broadcasters. I can't believe that you didn't know about that. And indeed, Professor
Actually, I don't know about that.
was...
You've just told me that. So that's the answer to your question. I didn't know about it. I've been on air.
But he did. But he did know about that. He pretends he didn't know about the bombing that happened at Press TV. You know that he knows that because, and then we'll go back to that segment in a second. It was just when he was interviewing Professor Morandi, as you'll see, Professor Morandi says it right here, that they have been bombed. Listen to this.
Iran's terrorism game
I am in a
is
building.
up.
I'm in IR. I am in IR. I am in the Iranian radio television building, and it has been emptied because they say they're going to bomb this building. And I stayed here for you, and you are.
And I think he cut a little bit there. But I had to play that again to show you, yes, he did know about it. Professor Morandi, this interview with Piers Morgan happened before the interview with George Galloway. So there's Professor Morandi telling him right there to his face what just happened to that building. But yet he tells George Galloway that he didn't know anything about it. You see how this man just continues to lie? Let's go on.
Well, you really need to be better briefed.
Well,
you're
okay,
interviewing a guy that you're punting.
You can have your views about that.
This is
in answer
very
to your
important.
question, I didn't know. So that's the answer to your question.
Well, you should have known.
Well, you're a better journalist than me. You're a better
Professor
broadcaster than me.
Morandi,
I didn't know.
Professor Morandi was in that building. I don't know if he's dead, but the story is that he was in that building to do an interview with you, and I very much hope that that is not true. And I very much hope that he is still alive.
He told me that was true. He told me that he'd been told to leave but I decided to stay and do the interview, in which all he did was call me a liar, a coward, and a genocide enabler.
So here's Pierce admitting that he did know. So how is you didn't know, but you say you did know? You see what I mean? So I don't know if a producer or something, I don't know if he has an earpiece or whatever, but it was very clear that he told the lie first. And now he tries to say, oh yeah, well, Professor Morandi told me. So you did know. Leading propagandists.
So you did know about the bombing of the Iranian TV station?
There was no bombing going on when I interviewed him, obviously, or I would have stopped the interview.
Pierce, there's mass casualties.
Yes, George.
In the
You
Iranian
asked me if I
TV
knew
station.
it was going on when I interviewed him. I didn't.
Well, it's a disgrace that you did not know.
Well, I didn't, or I would have
because you
stopped.
might have been able.
Now he's saying that he didn't know. You see this?
I did. If I'd known, I would have stopped the interview, obviously.
Well, this is going to grow and grow as an issue, Pierce. You may very well be in difficulty here.
I won't be in any difficulty at all. Why don't we get on with the interview?
One thing you did know is that Israel has scores, if not hundreds, of nuclear weapons. And you did not mention it. Why is Israel allowed illegally to hold scores, if not hundreds, of nuclear weapons in defiance of the law, uninspected by any agency in Dimona? And reports today from Dimona are that they are currently modernizing their nuclear fleet. Don't you think that would have put in a better perspective this issue of nuclear weapons? The reason I know you know it is because the brave Jewish whistleblower Mordechai Vanunu, who blew the whistle on Israel's nuclear weapons, came first to the Daily Mirror and was betrayed by your enemy and mine, Robert Maxwell, to the Mossad, and then spent 22 years in prison in solitary confinement, and turned up in the courtroom with his jaws wired together like Hannibal Lecter, so he couldn't tell the courtroom what he told the Daily Mirror. Finally, the story appeared in Andrew Neil's Sunday Times, but only after Maxwell had betrayed him to the Mossad.
So I think what's important that George Galloway mentions here is that why is it that it's okay for Israel to have a nuclear weapon, but it's not okay for Iran or, maybe Pakistan or whatever to have a nuclear weapon? And for me, it's the hypocrisy, right? And the inconsistency. You know who else has a nuclear weapon? North Korea. Do you see all this hostility from the US government trying to take that from North Korea? Why is it they're not focused on them having a nuclear weapon? Does everybody see the inconsistency here from the US government? So the thing is this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in that region, and if it were me and I'm in that region, and if I'm Iran, why is it that Israel is allowed to have a nuclear weapon? Israel, who wants nothing but to see my destruction and has called my country the curse. How am I supposed to feel? And so the thing with nuclear weapons is this: you get rid of all of them, or you let that be open to everybody. You get rid of all of them, or you let it be open to everybody. You do not get to make these exceptions for Israel. That is the thing that bothers me so much to the core. This exceptionalist of this supremacist state, this colonizer, you do not get to let them be the exception, and you tell other countries that they're not allowed to. Colonialism didn't end. It's still happening. It's called Israel. Let's let them continue.
This issue of nuclear weapons, according to Tulsi Gabbard, Iran is not seeking to build a nuclear weapon.
Why would you believe them?
February.
Why would you believe them?
Well, I believe Tulsi Gabbard.
Why do you believe Iran?
No, I'm believing Tulsi
given
Gabbard.
The atomic
here.
agency,
I'll come on to Iran.
Given that the atomic agency,
why do you want to dodge Tulsi Gabbard?
You've talked and talked and talked. Let me get a question in. The atomic agency, as you know, brought out a report in the last few days. It made it clear that Iran had lied, obfuscated, denied access, not allowed enough inspections, and that it now got uranium enriched to 60%, which is a massive stage forward from where they were at 3% a few years ago to now 60%. And the move from that to being able to create a nuclear weapon is actually much closer and therefore more potentially imminent as a threat. And I'm just curious why you would trust Iran as far as you could throw it, the regime, not the people, the regime, when they are clearly accelerating their nuclear program.
Why would you trust that agency when the director of intelligence, when Tulsi Gabbard said back in March that that was not the case? Also, why is it that Israel doesn't have to have any inspection, but everybody else has to be inspected? You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to have an inspection for Iran, but you don't have to have an inspection for Israel. Again, with the inconsistency, the exceptions that are made for Israel.
Clearly accelerating their enrichment program. Why would you not be concerned about that?
Piers, I trust Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump's director of national intelligence.
You do?
Don't you?
Well,
Don't you?
do? I'm surprised you do.
I'm very much hoping she'll be the next president, Piers. But I trust her. Don't you?
I don't know. I've interviewed her once in my life. I don't know whether to trust everything she says or not.
Well, you know that Donald Trump appointed her the director of national intelligence. Why would you doubt her?
Look,
Isn't Trump your friend?
I'm not doubting her or trusting her or untrusting her.
Does he appoint liars?
I'm asking you why you. I'm asking you why you trust the Iranian regime when they say they're not wanting to build a nuclear bomb.
Well, you're actually asking the wrong person for this reason. If I was running Iran, I would long ago have had a nuclear weapon because Israel has scores or hundreds of them. And as you've just heard, is determined to bring about regime change in Iran. So you won't get me to clutch my pearls about Iran having nuclear weapons.
Why wouldn't you want regime change in Iran out of interest?
So then he brings up regime change, right? Regime change, has nothing to do with Israel bombing Iran. You see, they keep trying to lead it back to that. Oh, the women and the children. Oh my God, the women are not allowed to have an education. The lies that I've heard are just absolutely ridiculous. Like, people are saying things that are 100% false, just exaggerating. We care about the women. We care about the children. No, you don't. If you cared about the women and the children, you would leave Iran alone. You would leave them alone. You would not intervene. You would not try to tell them what they can and can't do and what type of... Iran has a constitution, yes? Does Israel? Everybody has to wake up, right? Everyone has to wake up. Now, this piece here is probably the part that is the most telling, because Piers Morgan, for whatever reason, seems to believe that he can get to decide, or Western powers can get to decide who is worth keeping around and who isn't. Check this out.
Iran is presently the hero of the vast majority of people in the world.
Oh, rubbish.
And it's
absolute
the fact
rubbish.
That you can't see
what a
that.
Load of absolute nonsense.
Take your eyes off the posterior of the tiny part of the world, which is the Western world.
You think
Africa is with
most
Iran.
of the world, you think
Latin
the rest of the world
America is with Iran.
You think the rest of the world
China is with Iran.
Yeah.
Russia is with Iran.
Russia,
All the
China,
Arabs are with Iran.
Russia, China,
Take
any
your
other
nose out of the ass
North Korea
of the tiny number of people that you think are the world. They're not the world. The world is 8 billion people.
Right.
You're speaking for the little clique that leads a tiny fraction of fewer than 1 billion of the people of the world.
So just to be clear,
you cannot see beyond the end of your nose.
As I suggested then.
So let's be very clear. Let's show you what George Galloway is talking about so you can see it by the numbers, because I think people need to see this, right? When we talk about the West, let's go ahead and bring this up here on the screen. Check this out. The world population, excluding the NATO members, right? So, of course, they did a little bit of formula here, but I thought this is really important. The world population is estimated to be approximately 8.232 billion people. as of June 2025. Okay. The combined population of NATO members is approximately 973 million people. This is about 961 million based on other sources. Using this figure, 973 million for the NATO population, the population of the world minus NATO countries is 8.23 billion. 8.23 billion minus 973 million equals 7.2 billion people. Do you guys understand what George Galloway is saying? We are a small part of the world. We are not the majority. We are the minority. The West is the minority. And the United States, the US, it talks a big game. We're a big, bad, but we're tiny. We're not the rest of the world. So when people make these statements like Piers Morgan, they make these statements and they say, the world feels this, the world feels that. They're talking about it from a Western perspective, from the view of a Westerner. Professor Morandi invited Piers Morgan to come to Iran. He refuses to go. We are not the world. The majority of people in the world exclude us. You got to think about this for a second. There's more people in India and more people in China than there is in the United States. So when you remove the NATO countries, we are a small part of the world. So George Galloway is correct when he says the world is standing with Iran. He's right. You have to get outside of your bubble. Piers Morgan needs to get outside of his bubble. He didn't want to go to Iran because he don't want a different perspective. He want to stay in the Western bubble. And I got to break it to you, folks. The other countries, the way things are going, they'll probably continue to get bigger. Don't forget the childbirth rate. There's a big decline here of that in the United States. And some of these other countries that Piers doesn't want to acknowledge, they're still having children. So until we start to sit up there and try to understand the rest of the world, first of all, in that we are not the world, we are a minority when you compare us to the rest of the population, we'll never fully get it. The Western view is not the majority. And that's the problem with the West. So when you hear that from Piers and you hear that from George Galloway, that's why George Galloway is trying to say to him, that's why he broke that to him, because Piers doesn't get it. You guys have got to get out of the Western mentality. Let me let him finish here.
You want to put up as a defense for Iran that they're supported by China, Russia. Did you mention North Korea?
That's a lot of people, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But are they the kind of people, in terms of their own regimes, that we should be taking as good supporters of these benevolent people
You're
in
living
Tehran?
under Keir Starmer's regime, for God's sake. You're going to blame the British for Keir Starmer? The French are living under little Macron. When did you get the right to decide that 7/8 of the world's population cannot be considered valid because you, Piers Morgan, don't like their regimes? Listen, there's something else you didn't mention, and you must also have known about that. Unless you switch your mobile off at 10 o'clock at night, you already know that Iran is giving Israel a bloody good hiding every single night.
It's not, though, is it?
You described it all.
It's not, though, is it?
You described it all
not, though.
as a wonderful military operation
as
being
always,
conducted by Israel.
let me answer you. As always, the Iranian regime has put out apocalyptic statements about this will be the annihilation of Israel and everything. It's like it did the last time. And you know what happened last time? Nothing. They fired a few rockets and the dome dealt with them. This time they've got a few. This time they've got a few missiles have got through the dome. But the idea.
No, it's actually more than a few. Like I said, Colonel McGregor said earlier today, it's about 1/3 of Israel that has been hit. The damage is done. I think George Galloway did a really great job But I really do think like that conversation from him and Piers Morgan, it really does open up a perspective that I think people really need to get out of the Western mindset, and they really need to start thinking on a global level. And by thinking on a global level, that means getting outside of your bubble, right? Leaving your comfort zone and starting to see things the way that the rest of the world sees it, the majority of the world sees it. Because like I said, we're tiny. Let's go to the comments in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. AB said India and China together alone is about 1/3 or 30% of the world's population. Thank you, Cougar Lady. Sabby, Walter Beasley is one of the top jazz legends in the world. Please go see him at Scullers. That's a huge invite. Go. You know what? I'll mention this to the Hubs. He may be familiar. He's the one that introduced me to a lot of the jazz peeps. So I'll mention that. Did he tell me Friday or Saturday? I don't even know. Anyway, I'll mention it to the Hubs. John L. Piers Morgan would defend the British Empire today. Yeah. And Dwayne says, Pierce the propagandist. Absolutely 100. All right, guys, that is it for me tonight. I hope you have a good Friday and a good Saturday. I am going to be live Sunday. And other than that, guys, I'm way past my time. So have a good night. Keep up the fight.